Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Good afternoon, it's Friday afternoon. Welcome as always to the Locker Room. We are here from 5 o'clock till 7 discussing the games that are happening this weekend. A very, very busy weekend. I am Graham Duffy, your host. No Michael today. Happy birthday, Michael. He is gallivanting, I think, on his birthday. So hope he's had a good day. Hope everyone's had a good week. And tonight I am joined by Robbie Collins. Robbie, how are you, mate?
I'm doing good. Glad to be the weekend. Happy birthday to Michael as well.
Good stuff. We'll also be joined very shortly by Mikey, who will be on, but he's running a bit late. So we'll get Mikey on later to discuss the big Edinburgh Derby on Sunday. I don't think he's looking forward to that. I kind of am now, but we'll get into that very, very shortly. So before we go anywhere else, just in about 15 minutes' time, Scotland women are taking on Hungary in the Euro 2025 qualification playoff. That kicks off at 5:15. We will keep you updated on that score as the game is being progressed. I think Scotland win this. They've got one more game to play and then hopefully qualify. I mean, Robbie, we talk about the men's game. It would be great if the women can emulate that and qualify for Euro 2025.
100%. I mean, I was watching the SWPL highlights the other weekend. I know Shannon McGregor for Celtic Women's managed to get herself her first call-up. She was speaking very highly about going on to play the team, and she said, look, the Scotland women's manager made it very clear that the ambition's there to go and qualify, so let's hope they can get it done.
Yeah, I mean, a difficult game. Hungary are not a bad side. I think if it was at Hampden, maybe a different occasion, but the fact it's away from home, whether that helps Scotland or not, we don't know. But hopefully Scotland can get this job done tonight.
Hope so. Obviously, the two legs, hopefully we can get it done. So, I think when you're always away, you're always looking to try and get the draw going back. So hopefully we can at least not lose the game, try and get something going back to the home advantage, and then try and get the win. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll keep you updated on that. As I say, 5:15 kickoffs. We'll keep you updated on the scoreline for that. Now, before we get to the games this weekend, there is a lot of them. Obviously, myself, Michael and Reagan have been on already this week, Tuesday and Thursday, talking about the Scottish teams in Europe. But Robbie hasn't been on, and neither was Mikey, so I'll get his thoughts as well. But if we go back to Tuesday night, Robbie, there was a lot of question marks about Celtic going to Atalanta after the hammering that they took against Borussia Dortmund. But that was a very, very credible draw. And I said it on Tuesday during the show, Austin Trusty has maybe not been brilliant for Celtic so far, but that was easily his best performance of the season so far.
Yeah, 100%. A brilliant result for Celtic. I mean, look, the stats didn't exactly look pretty. I know Atalanta had a lot of the ball and a lot of the chances, but, when a Rodgers team, when he accepts that, he does need to go defensive and he can't exactly play the full Celtic way that he likes to play in the league in Europe, it does work and they can get results, and they've shown that because Atalanta, they're no pushovers, they're a really, really good team. So to go there, sit in, dig in well, the defence, again, Trusty, absolutely amazing performance for the whole Celtic team. So I think they were well deserved at a point in the end.
Good afternoon to Sandy on YouTube. I hope you're doing well, mate, and I hope you have a decent weekend when it comes up. I know United have got a big game tomorrow against St Johnstone. Yeah, I mean, it was one of these games on Tuesday that I know that Reagan and I did a preview show before the game, and there was a lot of talk about would Brendan Rodgers learn lessons, and he had said in his press conference that he's not the type of manager that's going to change the way he plays, but they did have to be very solid defensively on Tuesday because Atalanta put a lot of balls in the box. Lookman and Zappacosta were causing a lot of problems, but they dealt with everything pretty well, and you could tell with about 10 minutes to go that Atalanta were getting very frustrated. I mean, that performance was night and day from the Dortmund game where they made so many mistakes. They gave the ball away so many times. They were cut open. I think they maybe did learn lessons on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Celtic, it's the defence is so easy to fall apart when, you don't have a guy like Carter Vickers in there every week. He has such an important player to them. So to have guys like Trusty and Scales come in and manage to keep a clean sheet against an Atalanta side and stop that really, really good attack. I mean, you just need to look at Lookman, what he's done in his career. He scores a lot of goals. He's a very, very good player. So the fact that they managed to keep them quiet and didn't concede a goal is only positive for Celtic, and it will give them confidence as well after, how bad that Dortmund game was. To bounce back and get a point against a great team, it's amazing for them.
Yeah, it's a good point about Carter Vickers, because I think that's the question mark that was asked before the game is like, how are Celtic going to cope without him? But you have to go back to the fact that Austin Trusty was very good, and surely now he's got to kick on from that with that performance.
Yeah, I think so. I think the whole team can take confidence for it. I mean, look, I know if you look at the game, it was mostly the defensive players that got, the high ratings because they did have to sit and defend a lot. But even the more forward players, they created a few chances that didn't really show up on the highlights, but they did create a few chances. So I think if you're Celtic, you can be really, really happy with that type of result.
Can you understand why he started Adam Ida? Again, it was a lot of talk before the game about would he start Ida, would he start Kyogo? I kind of said it on the show as well on Tuesday that I think I don't understand why he played him because Ida's a physical presence. He can hold the ball up. It's not really Kyogo's game. Can you understand why they maybe started Ida over Kyogo?
Yeah, I mean, I can see the idea. You look at, the Scottish clubs going on to play Rangers or Celtic, you always try and look for that physical presence up front, whereas, for example, we like to play Mandro and Mayunga, two big physical guys to battle against the defence. It's just the exact same concept in Europe. You're playing against the more physical defences, and you need that type of player up there to try and hold the ball up. So I can understand why he picked Ida.
Do you think Celtic have a chance of getting out this, this league stage?
I think so. I mean, I think the next game's Leipzig, if I'm right in saying, at home. They've beaten them before, so I don't think it's impossible, but there is some tough games in there. So I think before you take on the likes of Villa, you need to try and pick up the points in the other games to try and get through. But if you're Rodgers, you've got to take confidence, and I think he's got to take belief that his side can go through, because the one thing we've said for a while is Scottish teams don't do enough, particularly in the Champions League. So if you're Rodgers, you've got to be looking at the fixtures that he's got left and going, we've probably got a good chance here. And with the new league phase as well, it's you've got more of a chance of getting through now than you ever did.
I watched Leipzig against Liverpool. Obviously, both our second teams, Liverpool, and I thought Leipzig were dangerous. They had a few decent threats. They are doing very well in the Bundesliga so far. They are right up near the top of the league. It will be a tough game for Celtic, but I think I said this to Michael Reagan on Tuesday. I think at Celtic Park, Celtic are definitely capable of beating a team like Leipzig.
Yeah, I think at Celtic Park, Celtic are capable of beating most teams, to be honest. I know, obviously, when you're looking at the Real Madrids and stuff like that, it's a bit tougher. But if you look at their games, I mean, Leipzig, Club Brugge, the next two home games, they should take confidence in both of them that they can go and get the result, because it is both two beatable teams, especially at home. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And we are joined by the latecomer. It is Mikey. Mikey, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, my man. We're just talking about the European games this week. Obviously, myself, Reagan, and Michael were on during the week talking about the games, but I was just getting Robbie's thoughts. We're just talking about Celtic. What was your thoughts on Celtic on Tuesday? I mean, I said to Robbie, there was a lot of question marks after the Dortmund game where they got absolutely hammered. There was question marks about could they cope without Carter Vickers, but as I said to Robbie there, Austin Trusty and Liam Scales were excellent. What was your thoughts about Celtic on Tuesday?
Well, I actually thought that Kasper Schmeichel was the main kind of guy that obviously was the one that kept the clean sheet. Obviously, the defence was brilliant as well, but I just think it was a very structured game. You can clearly tell that they took a lot of research from the Borussia Dortmund game, and they obviously did their homework going into that Atalanta game, and obviously I think they played very, very well. It's not like it was completely one-sided either. They did have a couple of opportunities themselves. So yeah, I thought they did excellent, and I was not expecting to get anything out of the game at all.
Yeah, I don't think many folk were, but like I said to Robbie, do you think Brendan Rodgers actually learned lessons after that Dortmund game? Because they were so open. They did make a lot of mistakes, but they were so open.
Yeah, and I think that the main point I took sort of out of the game was that Brendan Rodgers has adapted. Usually in Scotland, if you drop points, if you're Celtic, then it's a bad day at the office, and there's obviously a few things to take from it. But if you play your best, or you play the same way every week, you're not guaranteed to win, but you're more likely to win basically every game you go into. But you kind of need to switch up more when you're in Europe, and obviously Celtic, they were a bit naive going into the Dortmund game. I said that before, and I think that they obviously did their homework coming into this game, and they did exactly what they had to do.
Yeah, so a decent result for Celtic. If we go to last night's games, we'll touch on Hearts very shortly. I know Michael will be looking forward to that. But we look at Rangers' performance, Robbie, a 4-0 win for Rangers. We talked about it before we came on air against Steaua Bucharest. Bucharest weren't particularly great, but Rangers were far, far better yesterday. And I don't think any more so than Thomas Cherny, who looked up for that game, or Vladka Cherny, to say, who looked up for that game right for the start.
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird to watch Rangers right now because you watch them in Europe, and I know the first game against Lyon at Ibrox didn't exactly go great, but you watch them and they look a lot more up for these type of games. I don't think Bucharest were exactly brilliant. It was funny to see, obviously, Mihai Popescu, former Scottish player in this league, play in that game. But I don't think they really tested too much. I think it was quite a comfortable day for Rangers. Obviously, Cherny getting made of the plaudits, but I thought it was a real good team performance. I thought Barron as well. I thought he looked really, really good in the midfield. Was quite controlling it quite well. So I think for Rangers it was a really good performance. But again, they could go back into the league. I think they take on Aberdeen next week, and they could drop more points. So it's always weird to watch a Rangers team, but for the actual game itself, they deserve a lot of plaudits because I thought they'd done really, really well.
Mike, yeah, it was important Rangers got a win yesterday after the disappointment of Kilmarnock, but I think for Rangers fans who watched the performance yesterday, I think they got one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it was the perfect sort of response. The team was coming under a lot of criticism, rightly so. I mean, the team's not been anywhere near good enough this season. But I think that the main sort of issues that Rangers fans had, you could basically see a lot of them being patched up in that game, especially with the likes of Cherny, who his end product this season's been brought into question a lot, and he played really, really well last night. Obviously, he got 2 goals. And yeah, I think that it's something that Rangers fans can take as a positive, but we've seen it before. They played really well and then gone into the next game and dropped points. So it's not exactly a given that they've gone and turned the page here. It just seems like they're having individual really good performances and they're run with 3 or 4 games where they're not really at it. And when you're in the Scottish League, you can certainly not afford to do that at all. And obviously, when you're in Europe, I think the stakes are kind of elevated a bit more. And Rangers are, from what we've seen, Rangers seem a lot better in Europe, and they really raise their game to most of the games that they play.
Rob, I know you're hoping this doesn't happen on Sunday, but how important is it after yesterday that Rangers build on that performance and result? Because they've got big games to come. Obviously, they take on St Mirren on Sunday, but then that massive game against Aberdeen next week, which it will be critical, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Rangers, for them, they need to build as much momentum as possible. Obviously, we're looking to try and stop that. I don't think so. But at Ibrox, that's the perfect game to come back into the league in. After the defeat away at Kilmarnock, having 2 games back to back at home, it helps you build momentum, especially for that big Aberdeen game. Then, not to mention, they've got the cup semi-final after that as well against Motherwell. So it only gets tougher for Rangers, and they need as much momentum as possible. So for the weekend, it's absolutely massive they got that win in Europe, but for the weekend they need to respond in the league and pick up the win and be comfortable, because at Rangers you've got to say they've got to win probably all their games up until they play Celtic again, and then even at that you probably need to try and beat Celtic to win the league. So if you're a Rangers fan, you know how important this match is on Sunday.
Mikey, consistency is key, and Rangers haven't really had a lot of that this season. They've had some decent games, some really poor games. Hibs went to Ibrox not that long ago and played really well, but didn't get a result. Obviously, they got beat by Kilmarnock on Sunday. Yesterday was far better, but they just don't seem to have any real consistency just now.
No, and I totally agree with you. I mean, just look, a couple of weeks ago at the Malmo game, a lot of people thought, oh, that's going to be the page kind of turn, they're going to move on, and we saw how that kind of went for them. It just seems as though they have these false dawns maybe 3 or 4 times a season even, and this one could be another one. This one they could really kick on. You can't really tell, but I've just kind of noticed with the sort of the style of play that Clermont plays, it very much differs from game to game. There's no real consistent pattern there. If you look back at the weekend, you couldn't really see what the pattern of play was. They were just very slow and very, they were very slow and just they didn't really do anything. And then obviously last night they were very attacking, very positive. And I mean, it's night and day between 3 or 4 days of football, so it's very, very confusing watching them at the moment. But yeah, I'm not hugely expecting them to really kick on at this point. I think that it'll be back to kind of a mediocre performance in the next couple of weeks, and then yes, it just seems to get decent and then poor again. They're very inconsistent.
I think so I was just going to say, I think the biggest worry for Rangers fan is if you ask any Rangers fans right now what is their play, they wouldn't be able to tell you what the style of play is. It's baffling to watch. It's almost like Clermont tries to rely on the key players. I think, not to, dig out certain players, but I think if you ask Rangers fans, they'll probably be asking you how Tavernier's not been dropped in the last few weeks. I think he's put in some really bad performances. it's almost like Clement likes to pick his favourites. I think Rangers fans are starting to become a bit frustrated at that. So it'll be interesting to see where the team sheet is on Sunday, especially.
When I talk about consistency, there'll be one player that, again, divides a lot of opinion from Rangers fans is Cyril Dessers. Now, he went off yesterday, went in the tunnel, didn't look happy. I think he was injured. But even before that, he wasn't great. Now, he does get a lot of criticism. He does a lot of good things as well, but he does get a lot of criticism. I mean, I'm not really sure what Dessers is. It's difficult. I know he does score goals occasionally, but he didn't look great yesterday before he went off injured.
Yeah, it's baffling trying to talk about Dessers because, we say it all the time that if he was scoring as much goals as people expect him to go, probably wouldn't be here much longer. But even when you're watching him, some of the chances he does miss, you can't explain some of them. They're so simple and yet he makes them look so hard. So Dessers is like I don't think he's ever going to be happy. You're never happy when you get taken off as a player. But one of the players that did score, Igmani, he looks like he could be a good player for Rangers. So I think if you come on, you look at that performance and you go, Dessers might not be hitting the form that you expect, but there is players in there that can get goals.
Mike, I listen to a number of different football podcasts, and I listened to one a couple of days ago, and there was a couple of Rangers fans that were on the show, and they basically said that they don't understand why Clement was given a new contract not that long ago. Now, I kind of get the point. Do you think it was a bit of a rush to give him that new contract? And actually, one of them did say he's not done a lot to deserve it. I kind of got his point as well about that.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it was kind of brought over at the time and it was very much explained by Rangers that it was just to get a bit of solidity there because there's been so much sort of changing between managers and everything else over the last sort of half a decade, even more than that. And they just need they need someone that's going to be solid and an option that they're going to keep for the future. And they've obviously stuck by him. They've brought in some players that are very much his style of player. And we've seen it before when a manager for Rangers gets sacked, maybe 3-4 months into a season, it never really works. So I think the whole idea of bringing Clement the new contract was to basically say he's here to stay, and regardless of how things are going, we're going to stick by him. And I mean, when you're a club the size of Rangers, is that a good look? Probably not, but it can definitely give him the opportunity to push on in future. But the issue is the performances really aren't backing it up at the moment. But the only issue I would bring in is that who would replace Clement if he goes now that's of a similar calibre, because you can't expect a new manager to come in and start instantly winning things with a squad that isn't his. And it just seems to be an infinite cycle with Rangers where it's bring in a new manager, underperform, sack the manager and then bring a new one in. And it just never seems to work. So they need to try and get a bit of sort of continuous managerial time with someone, and obviously they thought Clement's the right man for that.
I think the big problem for Rangers is from a year ago, the performances haven't got any better. I don't know if you've seen the Kelly stats for the loss last year. They look almost identical for a Michael Beale team. So I think if you're a Rangers fan, the one problem that seems to be screaming out is where we're heading, because it doesn't look any different.
We'll talk about where we're heading, and it's almost like I scripted that, but I didn't. Let's talk about Hearts, who are now on a big, massive run. Yeah, it's only 2 games. I know I need to calm down a bit. But yesterday, I thought Hearts, and I said it last night, were very, very good first half. I know that Ammonia weren't particularly great, but Mikey, it's 2 wins in a row for new manager Neil Critchley. I have been very critical of the appointment. I thought it was a bit of maybe another cheap option. But I started to see signs in the last couple of games of what he's trying to do. And the one thing that I noticed yesterday, and I said this to Robbie before we came on air, Blair Spittle talked about this yesterday about Neil Critchley, and he said that it's not overcomplicated things. Football's not a difficult game. And it just made me wonder, and I talk about Blair Spittle, why on earth Stephen Naismith played Blair Spittle as a CDM. He's now got 3 goals in 3 games. Really good performance again yesterday. But Hearts have started to pick up a little bit. And yesterday against Ammonia, first half especially, was a very good performance.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that often when a manager comes in, you see the new manager bounce, and it's a new lease of life for the players. So they're trying to impress the manager, and obviously the performances rise a little bit. It's not completely... I'm not completely convinced yet, because that often does happen with a lot of managers. But considering the start that they've had to the season and the way that things were going, the fact that they've kind of picked up under Neil Critchley, it's obviously very positive for them. And I think that the longer this sort of positive run continues, the better it'll get for Hearts, and the more fans will kind of become on his side. Because I think that when he was appointed, there was probably a very high percentage of the Hearts fan base that weren't happy with it. He was the second option, and there wasn't really much hype around his name. Obviously, he's had a few jobs down in England where he hasn't exactly set the world alight, so there was a lot of convincing that has to be done. And I mean, 2 games isn't going to entirely do that, but I think if he continues on doing that, then he's in a very good place. But I've kind of noticed with Hearts lately, the intensity and the overall performance of individuals has been so much better, and the system is working much better, especially compared to how it was at the end of the Naismith sort of tenure.
Yeah, Robbie, Mikey used the word intensity there, and that's what impressed me most about yesterday, especially first half. We were pressing, we were all over them like a rash, and the intensity was there, and none more so than Blair Spittle, who last 3 games has looked exactly like the player that I thought we signed from Motherwell. He has been outstanding last 3 games.
Yeah, Blair Spittle's really shown his quality. I'm still annoyed that you took him for us, but I just think the whole team, it just looks fresh. Like, even when I watched them against us at the weekend, it just looks so much different, and it just looks so much better. I think one thing I did want to say was, Neil Crouchley, even the way he speaks, I mean, not to bring back this guy, but Neil Warnock, for example, it's easy for a manager to come up here and think the league's going to be an easy run, and to think you're going to take this team and it's just going to be so simple. But Neil knows that it's going to be a challenge. As you said, he's doing the basics, playing a very basic way, and it works. So to Blair Spittle and the whole Hearts team, but I think Crouchley looks like he could be the man to take us forward.
Mikey, I suppose, yes, I'm a Hearts fan, but the one thing I would say, I think what has helped us is the fact that Critchley's first 2 games are at home. I think that's a big help. Going away from home on Sunday will be more difficult, but I think he has been helped by the fact his first 2 games have been at Tynecastle.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fans were very much influential in that, especially last night. You could really tell that the fans were really packing the team up. The team was playing off the back of the fans, because I think that the fans were very loud last night. They were very behind the team, and you didn't really see that towards the end of the Naismith reign, because you'd see the boos coming in and the frustration. And I think the fact it doesn't really matter who the manager is. If there's a new Don there and the team's playing well, then it doesn't really matter who the manager is.
Yeah, Robbie, again, I was impressed with a lot of players yesterday. I talked about Blair Spittle, but I want to touch on Adam Forrester, young laddie who's come in. Now, one of the things Neil Critchley does like to do is play young players. And I, again, thought yesterday, Adam Forrester was superb yesterday. Got up and down that right-hand side. It was no wonder he got taken off late in the game, because he was knackered. But we talk about a time on the show, seeing young players getting a chance. In a European game especially, I thought Forrester was very good yesterday.
Yeah, and it's always good to see a young player like that do well. I thought Forrester, for what I heard, done really well. I think he's exactly, what we want to see more of. If you look at the game at the weekend as well, us bringing on Mooney for his debut, only at 16, it feels like it is starting to get a bit more implemented into the game slowly. But for Forrester, I mean, look, for it to be that big a game, Crouchley's second game, needs to make an impression in Europe. I thought he lived up to it, and I thought he done absolutely brilliant. So, a really good performance for him and the whole Hearts team. I thought everybody was good on the night.
We will come to talk about Hearts again very shortly in the Edinburgh Derby. I know Mikey can't wait to talk about that. I'm not quite sure yet. But anyway, before we get on to those, I just want to touch on other stories from during the week, and it is the unfortunate downfall of Inverness Caledonian Thistle. So as we know, they were placed in administration during the week. 4 players have been made redundant. They were Adam Brooks, Cammy Ferguson, Flynn Duffy and Wallace Duffy. They got a 15-point deduction. Duncan Ferguson left. They are now 12 points at the bottom, and no matter what league they play in next season, they will be starting on -5 points. I mean, they were in the Premier League 8 years ago, Mikey, and it was only June 2023 they played in their Scottish Cup final against Celtic, got beat 3-1. It is unbelievable just how bad that club has been run recently, and it's never nice to see anybody placed in that position. And I have to say, I think Duncan Ferguson's handled it very well. He didn't take any money. He wasn't getting paid. It's just very, very sad to see the plight of Inverness right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the whole situation with the manager not going with any pay for however long was very admirable, and it showed that he was all in for the club, and there was so much sort of togetherness there. And I mean, as much as it's not over yet, it looks as though they'll be playing in League Two next season, regardless of anything. And that's a huge shame, because we've seen it before with teams that are right up there and then dropping down really rapidly. But this is the first time when I've seen a team go from such a positive situation to the situation they are now in such a quick amount of time. I mean, the only one you can really think of is Rangers, and it obviously didn't really end too well for them in the end. And I mean, the only hope that we have is that the administration helps them out in some way. But yeah, I can't see a world in which they're playing anywhere other than League Two next season.
Yeah, Robbie, as Hearts, we've been through it. Rangers have been through it. There's a few clubs have been through it. But like I said, 3rd of June 2023, Inverness were laying up on a cup final against Celtic. And now, as Mikey said, it looks like they're going to be in League Two. It's been horrendous last few weeks for them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you look at that cup final, you go, Inverness could probably be in the Premiership again in a couple of years if they keep going the way they're going. But it's just been a complete tumble, and you've also got to feel bad for the fans as well. Going through something like that, I've never, thankfully, seen it with my club, and as long as I've known it. For the fans, it must be an absolute horrible experience. Obviously, Duncan Ferguson as well, getting not getting any money. You've just got to feel bad for them, but hopefully they can get through it all right. But I do agree with Mikey that they probably will be playing in League Two next season.
It's a really good point to make about the fans, because we always talk about the fact that players can go, managers can go, but the one constant is the supporters. They've done nothing to deserve what's happened to them, and it is a horrible, horrible feeling. We've been through it. I know how bad it is. But on the plus side for us, we had the fan base, we had the backing. Inverness don't really have that.
Yeah, I agree. But I think I guess the only real positive that you can take out of it is that it kind of forces a rebuild, in the sense that there's going to be huge changes up and down the club from basically every angle. And the only positive you can kind of take out of it is that maybe they can benefit in the long term by bringing in some younger talents that are less sort of expensive at the moment, but try and develop them. They can maybe sort of put more focus on the youth academy. And there's very little positives at this moment, but there is the sort of idea that by getting rid of whatever the situation is at the moment and not having that cloud looming over them, hopefully once they get out of this, then they can basically have a fresh start in League Two. They can try and build up from the bottom, I suppose. And yeah, that's the only real positive you can take. But a club the size of them will be, provided everything's all right with them and they end up getting through it, then they should be back up towards the Championship in a few years' time, because they're definitely not a small club in terms of Scottish football. I mean, they've won a Scottish Cup in the last decade. They've been in the final. They were very, very consistent in the Premiership. They finished 3rd in the Premiership one season as well. So it's not. It's a tiny club. Yes, they don't have the sort of historical element because they were only created in 1994. But yeah, I mean they're still quite a big club in terms of Scottish football, and I think as long as they get out of the situation, and they'll be back up towards the top divisions in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, Robbie, assuming that they do go to League Two, and it does look likely, do you see them coming up first time of asking?
I think you're probably need to see how the situation is when they eventually do go down. A lot can change by now at the end of the season. So I'd like to see them, not tumble even further than that. I don't think they will, but I hope they can make it through this okay, because as Mikey said, you don't want to lose a big club like that. In Scotland, Inverness are one of the more well-recognised clubs. So to have them even go into administration, it's just it's very, very weird to see at this time. But one thing I will say is I did see a certain Jose Mourinho said they wanted to take over the club now in Europe. So there's the new man for the rebuild.
That'll be box office, a bit like Ron Keane taking the Hibs job. But anyway, talking of Hibs, talking about going down, let's talk about the Edinburgh Derby. Now, let's talk about the games this weekend, but we are going to start with Sunday because it is the big game. First Edinburgh Derby of the season. Hibs starts at Easter Road. Mikey, I think if you asked 100 folk start the season, come 25th of October, who were the bottom two? I don't think anybody would have said Hibs and Hearts. No disrespect, but they would have said Ross County or St Johnstone. Mm-hmm. This is a I mean, the Derby games are always massive, but this has got extra incentive. The fact that Hibs and Hearts are both propping up the table. How are you feeling ahead of Sunday?
We're getting battered. That's exactly how I feel. That's how I feel about it. But I'll be completely honest. Hearts won't be down the bottom for very long. The concern is that Hearts have obviously had their issues at the start of the season. You know, the manager and all this. They've been underperforming. Hibs haven't got that tag around them of the majorly underperforming. We kind of went under the radar in terms of that, and now we're the ones bottom of the league, and it's not as much of a crisis as it is at Hearts. So it really shows where we are as a club, and it's terrible because, I mean, just look at us 3-4 years ago. We finished third in the league. The season before that, we didn't do very well. But the thing I've noticed is over the last few years, even in our worst performing seasons, we'd normally get a result against a big side. Like we get a big result throughout the season. We haven't had one last season, and we definitely have not had one so far this season. And yet again, it's just it's one of those situations where the sort of downfall of where Hibs have been in the last few years has really kind of gone under the radar, because we were the team that was touted to try and split the old firm in 2021 when Ange came in, because obviously there was the cloud around Celtic, and we've dropped to relegation battling within the space of 3 or 4 years, and it's not even like it's a major surprise at the moment. From Hearts' perspective, obviously they've kind of started picking up now though, so that's why I'm not anticipating much at all.
Robert, you obviously have no horse in this race. Your team is playing Sunday, but the Edinburgh Derby, Derby games are difficult to predict. I've seen it so many times over the years. Hearts going as favourites, we get beat. Hibs going as favourites, they get beat. It's one of these games. But going into this game, I mean, Hibs on the back of that really disappointing defeat against United last week. Hearts on a bit of an upturn. How do you see this game going as an outsider?
I mean, right now you've probably got to fancy Hearts as the away winners just by how correctly started. But this is the Edinburgh Derby. You know, it's probably my favourite derby in Scottish football because, you know, it's played so regularly. I actually really like both the fan bases when, you know, the game is on. So it's definitely up there. But I just, right now, Hibs seem to be able to get themselves into good positions and somehow throw it away. And I actually wanted to ask Mikey about Ellie Ewan because over the last few seasons, you know, he did get a lot of plaudits at one point, and you know, he looked like Hibs key man. But I've not really seen much of him this season. I mean, what has really happened to Ewan? And
He's injured.
Oh, okay, is he injured? I didn't know he was
Yeah.
fully injured. I mean, even at that, I just look at the Hibs lineup and Joe Newell's another one. I mean, he gets a lot of bookings in games. I think I struggle to explain where it's going wrong for Hibs because they always look to be in a positive position, especially against Dundee United in the winning position going into injury time, and then somehow it gets chucked away. It's astonishing to watch. So for the game on Sunday, I'd probably say Hearts are more in favour of them getting the win.
Good evening to Aslino on YouTube. Hi, gents. Have Hearts definitely turned the corner, or might it be a temporary new manager bounce? Well, I'm hoping we've turned the corner, but we'll find out on Sunday if we actually win the game and it's 3 wins in a row. But, I mean, I think, Mikey, obviously, I was watching the Hearts at Mirren game last week. I had an eye on other scores as well. I don't think I saw that United turnaround coming, but the fact that Joe Newell got sent off masters his disappointment. But the thing is, what I would say is, I don't think Hibs have played that badly this season. They've had a lot of decent performances. The one at Ibrox was actually key to that. But, and I don't know if I'd agree with this, but this was something I was hearing earlier on as well. There's always that thing that Hibs have really dodgy goalkeepers, and it looks like Bursing's another one.
Oh, he's been, especially if you look at the game on Saturday. But there's been so many times. Look at the 3-1 game against Celtic in the League Cup. Up until that point, we got back in the game. We were a threat on the counter. And I mean, I'm not saying we would have won the game, but we were in a position to at least bring it closer. And we've seen Celtic are not perfect. They were really struggling against Falkirk. They nearly lost to Aberdeen. And obviously, the Dortmund game, that's not really comparative. But I think if you bring the sort of situation that Hibs have been in this season, most of the times that we've lost, it's been down to a Bursik error in the last few minutes. But the sort of point that Robbie brought up about us dropping points right at the end, it's nothing new. Ever since I've really started watching Hibs, you usually see it most weeks where if we're 1 goal up going into injury time, or if we're in a good position, we'll somehow find a way to throw it away. And just look at the amount of draws that we have during the season, and I think that's the difference now, because back then we'd lose a goal in the last minute and we'd pick up 1 point. Now we're losing 2 goals in the last minute and picking up no points. And when you're down the bottom of the league, it just feels like everything goes against you, which it really is at the moment. But we have no one to blame but ourselves. Joe Newell was, I don't know what he was doing, and then Bursic just decided to come out and try and take out 3 of his own players instead of get the ball. But yeah, it's a very strange one at the moment.
Mikey might want to shoot his ears for this, but Robbie, the term Hibsing it was definitely used a lot last week after being 2-1 up and then losing 3-2. It is one of these things with Hibs, though. Like I said, I don't think they've played that badly in a lot of games, but as Mikey says, they keep shooting themselves in the foot. And I said it to you before we came on air, and I don't know if Mikey might agree with us, but if Hearts were to go Easter Road and win on Sunday, I think that might be the end for David Gray.
I think so. Obviously, I've seen a lot of Hibs fans online not too happy with Gray. I've only managed to see Hibs a handful of games this season. I've also seen them on the opener against us. They didn't look anything spectacular. Obviously, at Ibrox, it was a much better performance. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this weekend. But I mean, I suppose, Mikey, do you think Gray will get sacked?
I don't know. It's a very weird one, because when he first came in, I'm the first to say that I wasn't the biggest fan of the appointment. It's one of those where it was the cheap option, but it was still a risk, because it's the option that was kind of the one that was easiest to bring in. But the fact that we're putting all our eggs in one basket and looking towards the future with David Gray, I've just noticed that the way that he tactically and just the sort of decisions he makes within games is sometimes just ridiculous. And I think that provided if we do lose on Sunday, I think that'll, one, turn a lot of the fans against him, but 2, I don't know if that'll be specifically the end for him, but I think that it'll turn a lot of the fans against him, because you can accept a loss away at Ibrox, you can accept losses to Celtic, but the one thing, even though we're very used to it, losing to Hearts is never a good thing for Hibs. And yeah, it's one of those where if we end up getting beat especially heavily, which I can see happening, I think David Gray will be at least wanting to be gone from the supporters, maybe not by the actual people that run the club, but yeah, I mean, the people that run the club just don't know what they're doing either at the moment.
That's a problem, Mikey. I think there was a split in the boardroom about the manager. A lot of people wanted David Gray, a lot of folk didn't. And I kind of said this on the show as well to Mikey and to Michael and Reagan yesterday. Is it the fact that David Gray is a Hibs legend? Does that buy him more time? So even if they did get beat on Sunday, does that buy him more time because of his status at the club?
I think it just kind of creates an awkward situation where the fans are. I think obviously if it's a club legend, you're never wanting to go and be very vocal about, oh, David Gray, he doesn't know what he's doing, stuff like that. It can become a situation where the fans are not comfortable to do that, or not as comfortable to do that as compared to like Nick Montgomery or Sean Maloney, people who don't really have that almost personal connection with people at Hibs, especially because a lot of the fans that are watching, especially a lot of the younger fans that are on social media and very vocal, are the ones that were growing up when Hibs were winning the Scottish Cup and David Gray was the club hero. And I think if it was a different manager, then yes, the reaction from the fans would be very different, in my opinion.
Robbie, looking at Hearts going there, obviously on the back of 2 really good wins, 2 clean sheets, it's always a big game for us as well. We want to try and get up the table. Hearts are going there with a lot more confidence than we would have been about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 100% for Hearts. They've got to be confident going into this one. If you're actually, I get it was 2, semi-decent teams at home, but this is his first big test, going away for a big as game as this. For Hearts fans, they'll be very vocal and wanting to win this game. I don't even think they'll care about how Hibs were playing, to be honest with you. These Edinburgh Derbies, when you go into them, it almost feels like you can say form goes out the window, but in this game, I don't think so. Hearts just feel like they should be going to win this game, especially when the league actually started. But Hibs can show a bit of quality. They can get themselves into positions. It's just trying to get into that position and then actually hold on to it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the game, because I think if Hearts take the lead in this game by 1 or 2 goals, I don't see a road where Hibs actually try and get back in it, because it just seems like they can't right now.
Can I also just quickly say something? See, if we go 1 or 2 goals up, I'm not confident that we'll win the game. And I think that's the difference, because if Hearts go 2-0 up, the game's over. If Hibs go 2-0 up, the game isn't over. So it's one of those situations where it's very... It just shows the sort of difference between the sides. And we say, oh, Hearts haven't had the good opponents so far. They've had St Mirren and Ammonia. I reckon if either of them went to Easter Road, they beat us, to be honest, at the moment.
It's going to finish 0-0. You just know that, don't you? Both teams taking a point to probably take it. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm intrigued to see what Critchley does, because obviously the last 2 home games he's played 4-4-2. I'm intrigued to see if he'll change anything. I think what he'll do, I think he'll bring Oyegoke back in at right back. I think he'll play Yandanda. I'm intrigued to see what he's going to do, but this will be a test. I think any Hearts fan thinking this will be easy, it definitely won't be. But again, I'm intrigued to see what Hibs do. You know, after last week, obviously Joe Newell suspended. What do you think? How do you think you're going to line up, Mikey? Will there be many changes after last week, apart from obviously Joe Newell?
Unfortunately not, but I think that Chris Cadden's going to come out because I think he's injured or he's out for a little bit, and we shouldn't be playing him on the wing anyway. Martin Boyle was brought in off the bench, so I think he'll start, and I think it'll be Triantis and Kwon in the midfield. I think they'll kind of come in there, but yet again, I don't think that's a game changer. I'm struggling to see us get anything other than 2 or 3-0 defeat. If I'm being completely honest, I don't think that we're anywhere near the level that we should be. And as I said, Hearts had a bad start, but they're not a bad side. We are a bad side at the moment. We are a side that doesn't have the quality of a team like Hearts. We have a couple of individuals that are very good, obviously the likes of Johan and Kukarevich, but the team isn't performing at all. And I think if you were to do a sort of a man-for-man, I guess, sort of comparison between Hibs and Hearts, I don't think there's many Hibs players that we get in that Hearts team, and that's the main issue I would have going into this derby. I mean, I've tried to be positive, but there's not really many positives you can take when you're losing home games against the likes of Motherwell and your performances are so lacklustre.
I mean, Mikey, not to look too far past the game, but you've got Ross County and Dundee United next. If you win this game, could momentum start to build?
Well, I mean, win or lose, we have to beat Ross County and Dundee United. I mean, it's Ross County away, Dundee United at home. I think that, let's be honest, Hibs are one of the bigger clubs in Scotland. And, I mean, for saying, if we win this game, we probably should beat Ross County. Like, Ross County are a side that we should be beating, regardless of our form. But, yet again, even if we do win the game against Hearts, I don't have much confidence that we'll go and pick up 6 points after that. It's just the way that we play at the moment. It's not. It doesn't really garner any good results, and it doesn't really bring out the best in our players. I think that it's very much. It just seems very robotic when we play, and it doesn't really. There's no real spark in the team. There's no real energy. It's just very, very slow, and it's very similar to the way that Rangers played against Kilmarnock. There's nothing really happening, and it really takes a goal for the other side to wake us up, and that's the main issue. Because I think if Hearts score first, then it's a long way back after that.
Rob, it's something that I'm actually quite positive about. I didn't think I'd be saying this. We've scored 6 goals in the last 2 games. Shanklin's got none of them. Now, it was always talked about the fact that last season Shanklin basically got his 3rd, and he did. This season he's not had the best of the season so far, but the fact that we're actually scoring goals now and Shanklin's not involved he's not scored the goal, I think that's a positive. It does show that actually other folk can actually step in if Shanklin's not scoring.
100%. Obviously, Shanklin against us got a very good assist, a very nice touch over the defence. But I think you're right. I think for any Hearts fan, it is good to know that the rest of the team can actually get these results, and it's not just Shanklin carrying these on his back. So it's very positive. But again, for this weekend, you would probably like to see Shanklin hit the back of the net, especially in a game as big as this.
Talking of strikers, Mikey, Dwight Gale scored last week. Decent goal as well. Do you think he'll start after scoring last week, or will he be back on the bench again for him?
I think he's an impact sub. I think the way that he's been brought in is to be an impact sub, very much similar to Lafondra last season. Kukarevich is our starting striker. He's our main kind of guy. And I'm actually quite happy with the way Kukarevich has played so far. I think, obviously, the penalty aside, I think that he's been a threat. The only issue is we don't create enough opportunities to get him the goals. I think he's got 3 goals this season in all competitions. So it's not great numbers, but I think the fact that he is sort of showing a little bit of something is positive. And Dwight Gale is someone who is not going to last the full 90 minutes, so bringing him off the bench can try and provide a bit of energy later on in the game against the likes of tired defenders.
Prediction time. Robbie, what's your prediction? Hibs against Hearts, 12 o'clock kickoff on Sunday, live on Sky. What's your prediction?
I'm going to go Hibs 1, Hearts 3. I think it'll be 2-1, probably going into the second half, and I think Hearts will get another one later on in the game.
Mikey?
3-0 Hearts. As much as I hate to say it, I think it'll be 3-0.
I'm going to go 2-1 Hearts. I think it'll be close, but I think Hearts might just nick it. Let's move on to another game that's on Sunday. Robbie's beloved buddies St Mirren away at Ibrox on the back of not a great run just now, Robbie. But like I said before, you just gave a new contract to Stephen Robinson. I know you're happy about that. What is your thoughts ahead of this game on Sunday?
I'll be happy to keep it 3-0 at half time. I'm not confident, but if you try and look at positives, we have just gave the manager a new contract, which it's only going to boost the morale in the players. Like for the last few weeks, there's obviously been a lot of controversy online about whether to keep Robinson, which I honestly cannot believe there's even a discussion about that. Robinson is the best manager I've ever seen in my lifetime anyway. The fact that there was even talk of him getting sacked is beyond me, but we've got him tied until 2027, which is only going to help. In terms of the squad, it looks like Kilty and McMenamin will be back. McMenamin probably on the bench. I expect Kilty to start. I think the big thing for us is Robinson's changed the system a lot in the last few weeks. He switched to that back four, which it just doesn't work. Marcus Fraser playing at right back is honestly, I can't believe he even got minutes at right back anymore. Cannot cut it. I think Gogic just looked loose. I don't know if that's because we're playing in the back two now. It just looks like a headless chicken. But the big thing for me is the goalkeeping situation. Balcom has come under so much stick previously. Rightly so. I mean, like I always say, try and treat a player fairly, but criticise him when they need to. And I think Balcom deserves it because we're looking to pick up points here. I get the system of bringing in the lone goalkeepers for the Premier League. It can work, develop them well, but Balcom's getting a lot more criticism than he seems to be actually developing. I mean, you just need to look at the brand game away for how much he kept us in the game and at home for getting embarrassed out of Europe. So there is a good goalkeeper in there, but this Sunday I'd like to see us pick Uminski in goals instead of Balcom. I think it's the right decision. We've seen Uminski once before against Rangers and he actually made a couple of good saves. So I'd like to see him in goals. I'd like to see switch back to the 5-back, but in all honesty, I can't see anything other than a Rangers winning this game.
Mikey, I touched on this with Robbie before the show started. It was quite funny because I saw something on X a couple of days ago. I think it was a Hearts fan that posted actually that we lost at St Mirren, we sacked our manager. St Mirren lost to Hearts, so they gave the manager a new contract. But Stephen Robinson's got 1 win in his last 11. But I think it is good news for St Mirren that they have given that new contract. It is a good manager. Yes, they're struggling just now, of course they are. They're sitting 8th, maybe not a great season so far, but he's still a very good manager.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the fact that St Mirren have been so good over the last couple of years has really, one, got the manager the new contract, but two, given the fans that sort of expectation that they should be doing a bit better than they are, which is obviously a positive thing. And yeah, I think that obviously the sort of goalkeeping situation with Balcom, from what I've seen of him, he hasn't been great. But I think that the St Mirren team's kind of grown over the last couple of years. It was, I guess, it had a couple of decent players when I was a bit younger, and they were kind of trying to avoid relegation every season. And over the last sort of 3-4 years, they've kind of gone from trying to stay up to trying to push for Europe, and that's obviously a huge step for a team like St Mirren. And I think that going into the game, obviously tomorrow on Sunday, is not going to be the easiest game that they're ever going to play. I think they'll probably be a defeat for them. But I think the fact that the fans have now got that expectation to do better than they're doing at the moment is a huge positive, because 3-4, maybe 5 years ago, this start would have been seen as quite a positive start. And yeah, I think that the way that they're playing, it's not exactly like they're getting hammered every week. I mean, obviously the game against Hearts is kind of the exception, but there was games like, for example, the Motherwell game when they were right in it. And yeah, I think that they've had some decent performances without the necessary result, and I think that can kind of that can kind of cloud things a little bit, and I'm not surprised that the manager's got a new deal. I think he's done very well so far.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on a couple of Mikey's points, Robinson's made it very clear that if we finish 7th and maybe get top 6 once every 5 years, that would be a success for Sunderland. And I completely agree. We're not a top 6 club financially. Absolutely nowhere near it. So for us to even be competing at this level is amazing for us. I think the point about the players, when I grew up, I saw it was a team built around Lewis Morgan, really, attacking, getting the ball to him, making him do stuff. And now we're a lot more balanced. We've got players that we can sub in if it's not particularly going our way. Obviously lacking a bit in the right back position. Hopefully that changes in January. But we do have players in there that can go and make a difference. I'd just like to see Robinson make a bit more changes. It's good subbing out Boyd Muntz, but O'Hara's not been good. Gogic hasn't been good. Now, I'm not saying drop the ball for them instantly because they are going to help us ultimately in games. But if Gogic isn't playing well, bring him off. It's as simple as that. I know some players will be in higher pay and be expecting to play more game time, but if a player's not doing well, we need to try and get him off. So I'd just like to see Robinson be more brave in the decision making because Evan Mooney against Hearts, he came on, made his debut at 16. That's only positive for us. So again, I like to see him make the big decisions, but it was completely the right decision to give him a new contract.
Robbie, you talk about the goalkeeper. Now, if you're a striker, you might get 10 chances in the game and miss most of them, but you get the one goal that wins your team the game, you're a hero. You make a mistake in midfielder, you lose the ball, you give the ball away, there's plenty of players to back you up. You make a mistake as a goalkeeper, you've lost a goal. And I thought watching Balcom against Hearts last week, he looked very nervous. There was a couple of times he tried to play it from the back and he got caught by Spittle a couple of times. He didn't seem to learn his lesson. He looked, for me, very nervous last week.
Yeah, the one thing that Balcom isn't great at is distribution. We knew that coming in. He's a great shot stopper. He's proven that. But he's not a great distributor. So when we see him with the ball at his feet or trying to get goal kicks out of the park, it usually doesn't end well. For this game, look, I know I said Dominski should go on goals, but there's two ways to look at it. Do you put Balcom in, and even if he concedes a couple, but he makes a couple of saves as well, could that maybe build his confidence back in? Because that is what he's lacking in right now, so much confidence. So I just wonder if Robinson might go, right, you can play, you might concede a couple, but try your best. And if he does make a couple of good saves, then that could gain him some confidence. So I think if you're Robinson, it will be a tough decision, but you need to look up the top of the pitch as well because Van Veen against Hearts done absolutely nothing. For what I've seen, none of the attack done nothing. I don't know why we're playing Olasanya as a wide playmaker. It doesn't work. He's a top goal scorer. So we just need to switch back to the basics. Just play Olasanya through the middle. I'd probably drop Van Veen. I don't think he's shown us all we can do, but definitely just play Olasanya up front. He can cause defensive problems and not discredit Rangers' defence too much, but they're not exactly the fastest. So if we can get Olasanya running at them all game, I'm not exactly saying we can beat them, but we might get a few chances, and that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, Mikey, Kevin Van Veen looks a shadow for player he was at Motherwell. He's really not hit the heights at St Mirren yet, and I think when he signed, I think even I said that's a decent signing for St Mirren, but so far he's not really hit those heights.
I know, and I think it's the same at Kelly last season. Most people will probably forgot that he played for Kelly. He didn't really do anything there. And does the whole one season wonder thing apply to him? I don't necessarily think so. I think that he is a decent player, but I just think the way that he's kind of came back into Scottish football at not only Kelly but now St Mirren as well. Maybe he's not as good as he maybe was in that sort of form run that he had at Motherwell when he was scoring week after week. I don't think he's that sort of level of player consistently. But I just think that the way that he's kind of came back to Scottish football is obviously it's not been ideal in any way, shape or form. But I just think the way that St Mirren are playing in general at the moment, it doesn't help him anyway because they're not creating really enough chances, I don't think. And as Robbie brought up, there's players kind of out of position and they're almost trying to shoehorn Van Veen in by almost upsetting some of the rest of the team in the way that they're kind of getting moved around. And I don't think that's ever really a positive. I think that if he's to kind of be that main man, they need to sort of accommodate him in the right way. And I don't think they've gone around that sort of in the right manner at least from what I've seen so far.
Robert, is it a case of Sunday of just going to Ibrox and trying to frustrate Rangers?
Yeah, I think that's all you really can do, to be honest. I'd like to see us have a go, but as I say, I don't see it. Another one of the huge problems for us this season has been injuries. We get rid of James Bolton earlier in the season, bring in Jakoviti, thinking he can maybe break into the lineup, injured just like that. I know Richard Taylor's been carrying a knock. I think he's injury free now, which is good. But it seems a real problem that the defence looks a bit shaky now, which we haven't really seen before. The one thing we have always been good at is being organised and structured well. And especially against Hearts at the weekend, that just looked to be flung out the window. I mean, Graham, I don't know if you've seen it at the game, but Robinson just looked so frustrated. Like, he was watching the game and he was like, why is this game plan not working? It looked like the players just had their heads down for the first minute. It really didn't look like anybody was up for it. And as Robinson said, if we can go back to the basics, then we will get results. And, I'm no particularly looking at Ibrox, but the next two games against St Johnstone and Ross County, that needs to be 6 points in this season already. If we lose 6 points out of the games, we could be sucked right into a relegation battle, which I don't think we'll be in, but it's a possibility, and when you're in it, it's tough to get out.
Yeah, Mike, in terms of Rangers, obviously the talk is always, Rangers have to try and catch up Celtic. They've got a bigger problem, Aberdeen. If Aberdeen win tomorrow against Dundee United, which I think they probably will, they would then go 9 points ahead of Rangers. Rangers need to forget about Celtic and try and catch Aberdeen.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that, you can say that to an extent, but Aberdeen are 11 points with Celtic, so by catching Aberdeen, you almost catch Celtic in the process. Obviously, it will change a lot between now and then. I think that game with Aberdeen was the one that was really the statement against Celtic. I think the way that Aberdeen played and the way that they went around it was very brave, and it showed the way that Aberdeen really are a threat to Rangers and maybe even Celtic as well. I think that Rangers just need to take it one game at a time. They are kind of looking too far in front of themselves at the moment. I think the fans are instantly going, we need to be here in this many weeks. They need to just win consistently because, unfortunately for them, the way that they're playing now, they are relying on Celtic and Aberdeen dropping points, because if they don't drop points, then Rangers can't get any closer to them. So, yeah, I think it's one of those where Rangers just need to take a game at a time. And yeah, I think they will beat St Mirren. But the main issue is every single time that they've went away from home this season, I don't think there's been a single time when they've looked completely comfortable winning a game. I think that they've been given quite a good few games at home as well. So yeah, I don't think that Rangers are in a great place at the moment anyway, but I just especially think the way that sort of Aberdeen have started and Celtic have started has really sort of highlighted their problems more, because that gap is already 2 wins and it'll grow to 9 points if Aberdeen go and win on Saturday.
Robbie, Rangers probably will freshen the team up. They've got players they can bring in. Obviously, Igamani came on yesterday, did score a goal and looked really good. Is there players in that Rangers team that concern you going into Sunday?
I mean, I think for this game, I don't think it'll take too much for Rangers to be able to break us down right now. I fully expect that we'll probably lose this game, unless an absolute miracle happens. I know one of the last times we went to Ibrox, O'Hara scored 2 absolute stunners. If we could do that again, that would be nice. But if you're Rangers, I just expect more of the same. And this is what I mean when that team sheet comes out on Sunday. Rangers fans fully expect to see the same type of team that's been playing every week, because Clement doesn't seem to change these players. Tavernier will start, Dessers will start. Raskin will probably get dropped again onto the bench. So for Clement and the Rangers fans, I can see the frustration, but this will probably be a comfortable win no matter who Rangers put out at the weekend. So I don't know about Clement and the team changes, but I fully expect it to probably be the same.
Mike, I spoke a lot about Rangers last night and needing a win and a performance. On Sunday, does it just matter if Rangers win? Performance doesn't really matter. Do you think Rangers fans will forgive it if it's a 1-0 win, or do they want a performance as well?
I don't think so. I think that they need the performance there. I think we've seen from Rangers fans in the past that if they only win a game 1-0, I mean, look at the Hibs game, for example. Look at the way the Rangers fans were reacting after that game. It was very negative, even though they won the game. And Rangers need to start setting some standards, because teams need to be scared to go to Ibrox, and they aren't at the moment. I mean, for example, yes, teams will be thinking we're probably not going to get anything out of this, but it's not the fortress that it once was. And I mean, just look at the way that teams like Hibs, for example, went there, could have got something out of the game and really kind of went for it. And if teams go for it against Rangers, they can kind of break them down and sort of manufacture opportunities. So I think Rangers need to have a dominant display, because I've kind of brought this up before, but I think their only real dominant display this season so far was the 6-0 against Ross County. Apart from that, they haven't been particularly miles better than anyone they've played. I mean, obviously apart from last night, but I think the last night was a bit of an anomaly just because of the way the fans were behind them and the way that the opposition were playing. I mean, Bucharest were pretty terrible. I think it's pretty sort of obvious to say that. But yeah, I think the Rangers need to try and create that fear element again that they've kind of lacked over recent sort of times.
Okay, prediction for Sunday. I have to start with Robbie for this one. Rangers St Mirren, what's your prediction?
I mean, just to quickly touch on one of Mikey's points, I mean, teams should be going to have a go at this game, but in terms of my prediction, I don't think we'll have a go. I think it will just, one thing I did credit Robinson on was it could get the players to, have a go at these teams and not be scared, which under Goodwin and a couple other managers before we didn't do. So I think we will try and give it a go. I don't think it'll work though. And I'm going to go 3-0 Rangers. That's probably minimum at half time, but I will say 3-0 Rangers with a high hope that it doesn't end up embarrassment.
Mikey, thoughts for that game?
I think I will agree with Robbie on this one. I'll say 3-0 Rangers. I think it'll probably be 2-0 at half time, and then it'll be one of those games where it's very dull for maybe 25 half an hour in the second half, and then Rangers go and completely kill the game off with a third. I mean, is a 3-0 defeat away at Rangers for a team like St Mirren a horrendous result? I don't really think it is, but I think for the way that St Mirren are kind of playing at the moment, it kind of can become a little bit worse than it kind of is. It looks a little bit worse. So yeah, I think it'll be 3-0 Rangers, but I don't think it'll be a performance that's unacceptable from a St Mirren perspective, because outside of maybe Celtic and Hearts, Aberdeen, Hibs, losing 3-0 away at Rangers is not exactly a horrendous result.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a clean sweep. I think it'll be 3-0 as well. Sorry, Robbie. It's coming up for half time in the Women's Euro 2025 qualification playoff, and it's still Hungary 0, Scotland 0. So we'll keep you updated on that if any goals go in. We are the second hour into the show. It's been a quick hour, and we still have a number of games to get through. The final game on Sunday is at Fir Park. Motherwell taking on Celtic. Now, this is a tough game, Mikey, because Motherwell have actually done very well so far this season, and Celtic, off the back of a European game, it's always difficult playing European games and then coming back after that. But this will be a tough game for Celtic.
Yeah, well, and I think that the way Motherwell have been playing, they're very solid defensively. They've got a very good defensive record. And if you look at the games between Motherwell and Celtic, they are often very close. I mean, if you look at last season, you take the first game was a 2-1 Celtic win. They won in the last minute. Then there was a 1-0 draw at Celtic Park where Motherwell scored right at the end. And then the 3-1 Celtic in March was 1-1 up until the 90-something minute. So there's usually late goals and there's usually a very close game in there. So, yeah, I think if I'm going to go with anything, I think Celtic will probably win it late again. I don't think it'll be a dominant display, because I just don't think Celtic have been really at the top of their game recently, apart from obviously the game on Tuesday night. But I think that game really took a lot out of the Celtic team because of the way that they were playing, obviously the energy it took to kind of compete with Atalanta and bring it right to the end at a 0-0 draw. So yeah, I think that Celtic will probably go in, really struggle for a while, and then probably score very early on.
It's difficult, Robbie, to talk about Motherwell and not talk about Lennon Miller, but he has just grown in stature, and yet again this season he has been easily Motherwell's best player.
Yeah, I mean, especially against us as well. I mean, I remember watching them. The one thing I said before the game was, if we can shut Miller off, you've got a chance. But teams don't be able to seem to shut him down because he's just that good. Everything he does with the ball seems to turn to something into goals. So if you're Celtic looking ahead to Sunday, you'll be worried that Lennon Miller can create chances. And I think Motherwell can, obviously, and the result didn't particularly go their way last week. But coming back into it, they'll be confident that they can pick up a result against Celtic, because it has been a good start of the season for Kettlewell, and again, Motherwell's one of the prime examples of if you stick by a manager, it can work. But again, we speak about it all the time. Kettlewell come under barrels of pressure, but Motherwell said, we'll stick with you, and it has worked. So from Lennon Miller and Kettlewell, they've got to be feeling confident for this game.
Yeah, Mikey, we talk about young players coming through all the time at clubs, and we talk about David Watson at Kilmarnock, who we'll get to later. But Lennon Miller this season has just seemed to have gone up a level, and there obviously will be a time where Lennon Miller is going to attract a lot of attention. Motherwell could get some decent money for him, but right now it's just great to see a young talent playing so well.
Yeah, it is, and I think that obviously last season it was kind of the whole Lennon Miller and David Watson debate, who's better. I think this season Lennon Miller's gone a level above. I think that the way that Motherwell have started and the way that he's so influential to that, especially at such a young age, I think that give it maybe one or two more transfer windows and he'll be off for really big money. And yeah, that's a huge positive for Motherwell, because these types of players only really come up once every maybe decade or so, where you have someone at maybe a lower Premiership team or a lower Scottish team who is really playing at the level that he is. Obviously, we have the likes of like Taylor Sutherland, for example, at St Mirren. He's a sort of lower kind of calibre example, but I think he was one of them that had the potential to kind of go on and have really positive moments. I mean, yeah, it's very rare that you have a player like that at that moment, and I think that last season there was kind of times where maybe he was a little bit overrated because obviously his age and he was starting every week. I don't think he maybe had the influence that people maybe assumed he did, but I think this season he's really kicked on and he's the main driving force in that Motherwell team, and I think he's really exceeded any expectations already.
I mean, just to ask you guys a question quickly on Lennon Miller, because I remember watching the cup game and, it single-handedly got Motherwell through to the semis. And how much do you think Motherwell can get for this guy now? I know there's always a lot of discussion about prices in Scottish football and players leaving for cheap. There's already been reports that teams are looking to pay up to $6 million for this guy. So, I mean, if Motherwell play comes, I mean, how much do you guys think Motherwell could get for him?
Do you want me to go first?
On you go.
Yeah, I think it depends on the club that goes for him. I think that teams down south could offer upwards of maybe 5-6 million, but I think it'll be maybe a little bit less if it's, for example, an Italian team. Lennon Miller's another one of those players, like, for example, Aaron Hickey and Ferguson, that I think could potentially go on to the Italian league. He's one of the players that kind of fits that sort of bracket, obviously, like Josh Doig as well. I think he's one of those players that he'll be looking at those and thinking, I can really develop into something if I move to the Italian league. And yeah, I think that they can definitely get some very good money out of him. I think there's no debate there'll be multi-million pounds, which for a side like Motherwell is massive. It's not like that kind of deal comes around very often. But I mean, look, a few months ago at the likes of Theo Bayer, who left for a good, I think it was $1 million or just under $1 million, something like that. They are really making good profits off their players at the moment. I think that's especially for a homegrown player such as Lennon Miller, to get multi-million pound offers for him is a huge deal for them.
Yeah, I could definitely see him going for what Mikey said there. And I could actually see him going to like a lower end English Premiership team. He's not going to be in, he wouldn't be in for me in the top, like maybe top 8, 9, but I think lower end Premiership, he could definitely get in there, because I think he's just levels gone up massively, and it won't be long surely till see him on that Scotland team. I mean, the strongest part of the Scotland team is the midfield, but he is such a quality player. I love watching him, and I know that Stephen does as well. But when we talked about Balcom earlier on, Robbie, I mean, I know that Stephen raves about the goalkeeper at Motherwell, Oxborough. From what I've seen, he looks very, very impressive. And again, I think he looks, maybe it's harsh to say, but I think he does definitely look a level above Liam Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, for what I've heard, there is a very, very capable goalkeeper. And I think, when you're building a team in this league, one of the things you need is a good goalkeeper, because you can almost guarantee that they're going to come under a lot of chances. So to have a goalkeeper where, you're making comparisons to Liam Kelly, it's absolutely massive for the club. So I don't think that's unfair to say. I think that credits how good he's been so far.
Oh, Mike is getting serious. He's got a hip stop on now. I just saw him undoing that. He's got his hip stop on. I've got my heart stop on. With my big game coming up on Sunday. But yeah, I mean, just looking at Celtic, Mikey, obviously they're coming off the back of that really good result on Tuesday. But like I say, coming back from European games is difficult. Celtic do have the squad. They can make changes if they have to. Obviously, Kyogo could come back in. Luke McKillen could easily start. They've got such a big squad. But like I said, I think this will be a test for Celtic because Motherwell have had a good start to the season so far.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the main thing I obviously brought up earlier was the defensive prowess of Motherwell. And I think that Celtic have, if there's any real negative you can kind of take out of their season so far, it's that they do struggle against the teams that are very defensively strong. I mean, Ross County aren't a team that can jump out you as a very strong defensive side, but they really struggle to break them down. And yeah, I think that Celtic haven't been exactly as sort of dominant as I thought they'd be in the sort of early stages of the season. And that can only really be a positive for Motherwell. I think if they can keep themselves in the game for as long as possible, it opens up that sort of opportunity. And as I said, there's this sort of long track record of Motherwell getting good results against Celtic. Maybe not even ones where they pick up points, but positive performances that they don't get beat by 3 or 4 like other teams do. It's very much usually they are within it, maybe even getting a draw or maybe a 1-goal defeat. I mean, you're never really happy to lose a game, but if you're to lose 1-0 to Celtic, if you're a team like Motherwell, that's not exactly a poor result, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly give another midfielder credit for Motherwell, I mean, Halliday's been on his game quite a lot in the recent weeks for what I've seen. A lot of fans seem to be giving him praise. I mean, we speak about Lennon Miller all the time, and it's good to have the young midfielders come through, but that just shows you, the older guys still can make the difference in these sides. So, I credit Andy Halliday because I actually thought he's been one of the better players in the Motherwell team the last few weeks.
He loves the goal against Hibs as well. Sorry, mate, I couldn't resist. But, I mean, just looking at Celtic, Robbie, I'd actually raised this point with Reagan and Michael on Tuesday. I know they signed Arnie Engels, £11 million. He's a good player, but they've got a guy like Luke McKillen sitting on the bench who I think anytime he's come on off the bench has looked very good. Is Sunday a game that he could come in and start?
I think so. I definitely don't think it's out of the possibility. Like Celtic will need to, chop and change the lineup eventually when you're playing the sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, then the Sunday football. So I definitely think it's a possibility he could come in. I think he's good enough to come in as well. McGowan has quality in there that he can come into this lineup and make stuff happen. So it'll be interesting to see the Celtic team sheet, especially as well in the forward area. Is it going to be Kyogo? I probably think it'll be Kyogo this time, but it'll be interesting to see what side Rodgers puts out.
Mikey, Aberdeen are obviously doing very well just now, and I kind of said this as well to Michael and that on Tuesday. As well as Aberdeen have done, I do still think Celtic will end up running away with the league. Do you think there is going to be a title race this season, or do you think Aberdeen will drop off?
Short answer, no. I don't think there will be. I think that Aberdeen are, although they're doing very well now, and I think they're really in a good place to actually battle for second place. I just think that when you look into, Celtic, I've brought this up so many times, but Celtic can bring on players that are worth 3 or 4 times more than Aberdeen's most important substitutes. And these are players that are coming on as the 4th or 5th sub option. Just look at the sort of gulf in wage and value in terms of just basically everything. Celtic are so far ahead, and obviously the game at Celtic Park did show that Aberdeen are able to compete when it's a sort of 11v11 game. But I think that as it comes down to the sort of winter period, I think when it becomes 2 games a week and the schedule starts to become really sort of difficult, I think that's when Aberdeen will start dropping a few points. And I don't think the wheels will come off. In a sense, I think that they'll still continue being very good. I just on the incredible run they're on at the moment, and I can still see Celtic running away with the title.
Yeah, Robbie, this is a thing we talk about budgets all the time. It's something that gets brought up a lot on the show. But if it comes to January and Aberdeen are still just behind Celtic go into the transfer market and spend £6-7 million on a player. Aberdeen can't do that. It's very difficult to try and compete with that.
Yeah, if you're feeling, I think I agree with Mikey that I don't think it'll be a title race this season. I just think Celtic, as you said, they're too strong. They can go into the window and just strengthen wherever they need to. Whereas, Aberdeen can't particularly do that. But one thing I will say is I do think it will be a second place race. I can really see this season coming into the wire with Aberdeen and Rangers, and honestly, it won't surprise me if Aberdeen manage to pull off the second place because Rangers just don't have that threat about them right now. Where I don't think Rangers could go to a Celtic Park and pick up a result like Aberdeen can. So for Aberdeen, they are showing promise this season. Now, we could all be wrong, and at this time at the end of the season, they could be fighting for the title, but I just don't see it. But I also don't see the wheels coming off, as Mikey said. I think they'll be fine, and I think they'll probably challenge for second place.
Mikey, I know we talked about how well Motherwell have played this season, and they have done very well. Would it be a major surprise if they beat Celtic on Sunday?
Yeah, it would. Realistically, it would be a big surprise, just simply because outside of Celtic and Rangers, if anyone beats them, it's a big shock. I mean, the fact that Aberdeen managed to get a point against them, they're second in the league, 11 points, and they picked up a point against them. That was a big shock. So if Motherwell go and beat them, absolutely it is. But I think that we can't overlook Motherwell. Motherwell aren't this tiny little side that Celtic should steamroll over. I mean, Motherwell have been very, very good this and I mean, that shows in the table and that shows in the performance levels that they've had. I mean, getting wins away at Hibs, but I think that, yeah, it'd still be a big surprise.
Prediction for this one, Mikey?
1-0 Celtic.
Robbie?
2-1 Motherwell.
Oh, he's
Wow.
going for the shock. I'm going to go 2-0 Celtic. I think Celtic will sneak it. Let's move on to Saturday. Big games on Saturday. And we'll start with the half-5 game. I know that Paul Donald is watching. Paul says, hopefully there will be a title race this season, but sadly, I think you're right. The financial gap is too big, but then hopefully within a couple of seasons. I mean, Aberdeen have been sensational. They've been absolutely fantastic, Mikey. That result last week against Celtic, not many teams will go to Celtic Park, be 2-0 down and come back and get a point. And it just goes to show that Aberdeen they are very, very good this season. I mean, the goals they scored last week, the pass from Jamie McGrath for the first goal is sensational. They get the equaliser, of course, it is deflected, but to go to Celtic Park, to be 2-0 down, again, I was watching the scores coming in last week, and when Celtic were 2-0 up, you think, oh, this will be 4 or 5. But Aberdeen have shown they've got something about them this season.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's really set them apart, because going into that game, you're kind of thinking, yes, they've had a really good start, but what have they done in a sense of against these big sides, and can they really compete when it gets to that next level? And they've shown that they can. Unfortunately, I think that as sad as it is in Scottish football, if a manager doesn't do well enough, they get sacked, and if they do too well, they get snapped up by a bigger side. So I think it becomes even more difficult now for, even if a miracle does happen and a team wins the league, their manager will get taken, their best players will get taken, and they'll be right back down into mid-table or maybe above that. So I think from Aberdeen's perspective, when you have a start like that, you really need to capitalise on it, because they don't really come around very often at all. And I think, I mean, even the way that things are looking right now, they could really fall off if they start putting in poor performances. I mean, just look at Hearts a few years ago. They were top in November and they ended up just scraping top 6. And it's one of those where, yes, they're doing incredibly well at the moment, but can they sustain that over a long period of time? And I think that, yeah, I mean, the longer this run keeps going, the more the confidence grows. But I think that the main thing that I'm kind of waiting on now is when they do eventually lose, how do they come back from that? Because if they then lose one and then come back and start playing really well again, then it really does set a standard, which I think is even more impressive than just going out and winning games every week until you start losing.
Paul says, I was at the game last week. When we went 2-0 down, I was thinking it would be just damage limitation for the rest of the match. And probably the previous managers it would have been. And that's a fair point as well, Robbie, because I think what you've got to give Thielen credit is he made changes at half-time last week. He also changed the formation, and it really, really helped. I don't think other Aberdeen managers would have done that. He's got to give massive credit. Now, again, before the game, for the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of question marks about Aberdeen have not really played anyone yet, which I think was harsh. Well, they certainly have now, and they competed very well last week.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, the phrase, you can only beat what's in front of you, comes to life with that. You know, Aberdeen, they might have not played the best opposition, but they're beating the teams that they are playing, so it's positive. I mean, for Phelan, it just seems like that manager, he's so demanding in a good way. You know, he doesn't let a game go even when it is 2-0 down at Celtic Park. He will tell the players, look, we are battling back into this. And I almost cried tears of joy watching Jamie McGrath through ball for Aberdeen's goal, honestly. What a player he is. I mean, I know I bang on about him every week, but it shows some quality. He is a very, very good player for them. I think he is hugely influential. So I think if you're Aberdeen, you've got to take confidence for that. And to be honest, I don't see Phelan or the Aberdeen team being the type of team that when they eventually do lose, fall off a cliff. Phelan to me seems too demanding and too good a manager to be able to let that team slip. So I think for the rest of the season, even when Aberdeen do eventually lose, I think you will see a bounce back straight away. You know, I know we'll get into the tougher sort of fixtures around the Christmas period, but I think Aberdeen can commit this the right side, you know, the path with more wins than defeats.
Can I also just quickly say something just about the whole Aberdeen haven't played anyone sort of idea? They've now played first, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth from last season. And I mean, obviously, maybe the names aren't quite as big. Like, for example, if you think of Killie and, for example, Hibs are probably seen as a bigger game. But if you take things into account, over recent years, Killie have been the better side. So even if you want to take that, just because they haven't played Rangers, it doesn't mean that they've only played easy sides up until Celtic and Rangers. Like, you don't have to play Celtic and Rangers to have tough games. And then even this season, they're playing a Motherwell team who's been really, really good so far. So I think the whole thing about them not playing anyone's just very forced anyway.
I would agree. I mean, Mikey, winning breeds confidence, and Aberdeen are just winning every week, obviously apart from last week where they got a draw. But there was questions raised about, you know, could they handle life without Bojan Majowski? Well, they've more than done that. They've been fantastic. The signings that he's made as well have been fantastic. You know, bringing in guys like Kevin Nisbet, who again has looked really good. Keskinen's looked really good. They've signed very well, and they do have a bit more steel about them.
Yeah, they do, and I think the fact that Dukes came back in and I think he's one of the only players that I've seen be so intent on leaving and then come back and be forgiven so quickly. I mean, he's been absolutely sensational since he's come back. Obviously, we look at the likes of McGrath and Clarkson and all these players from midfield, Keskinen, and yeah, they're unbelievable. But look at the options they're bringing off the bench, like the Shaden Morris and that Palaversa. They're coming on and changing games themselves as well. So it's a huge element for them that they can have players of very good quality in every position, and their backups are still very good as well and able to chip in the goals. And I think the whole thing as well is that not just results, but the team bonding and the sort of the thing built with the fans as well from Jimmy Tilleen is absolutely excellent. And I think that's just basically built a situation where everyone's behind the team and everyone's fighting for each other. And I think that's what's really been missing from teams like Hibs and, I mean, Hearts at the start of the season as well. That's what's really set them apart.
Yeah, Paul says, if you listen to Jimmy Tilleen, he always just says one game at a time. So if we do lose a game, he doesn't let it affect what happens in the next game. And it's a fair point, Robbie. I mean, you can only take it one game at a time. You can't look to the next game. All you can do is look at the game tomorrow. It will be a hard game. United have done very, very well so far, but he doesn't seem to let much affect him. You know, if I go back to the game at Pittodrie when Hearts were up there, I thought Hearts should have got something at the game, but Aberdeen go right to the last minute, get the last minute goal. You don't have to play well, but they're still picking up wins, and that is important.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think Phelan was saying in his recent presser that he's already forgotten about the Celtic game, which, you know, it's big for the manager to come out and say something like that, because you could bask in that result. You know, going away to Celtic Park and getting one goal, never mind two, is impressive. You know, if you asked any Aberdeen fan, including Paul, when Neil Warnock was around last season, would this bulk of Aberdeen players be able to go and do it? And they probably would have laughed at you. And now you look at it and, you know, Billy can be right up there and competing. I think, you know, not to discredit Jim Goodwin too much, because I think it has been a good start of the game, the season for him. Aberdeen know how to break these teams down. You know, teams do tend to sit behind the ball and play very defensive against, you know, the likes of Celtic, Rangers, and I think they're probably going to start seeing it a bit more with Aberdeen now. But the one thing Phelan can do and the team can do is break these teams down. So that you know, that is absolutely huge. You always see teams like Hearts and Hibs in previous seasons, you know, dropping stupid points when, you know, you potentially shouldn't be, because teams are just wired so behind the ball. You know, especially when the likes of Livingston and Hamilton were kicking about the league. You know, it was much harder to break them down, but Aberdeen seem to be able to do that so far, so it's been very, very positive for them.
Mike, if you look at Dundee United, it's always difficult when a team comes up from the Championship. It's more a case of, can they stay in the league? United are more than doing that quite comfortably sitting fourth, got that win against Hibs last week. They've been very impressive, and they will cause a problem to Aberdeen tomorrow.
Yeah, they will. And I go back to the Dundee Aberdeen game, where realistically Dundee should have taken something out of that game. They were very, very good in the second half against Aberdeen, and that's maybe what Dundee United can play off of, because it's not like Aberdeen have been totally flawless in their games. There's been games in which they've not played well. I mean, the Hearts game, they were pretty poor for most of that game, and I think that there is that potential that Dundee United can play off of that. It's just whether they are able to kind of do that, because Aberdeen are obviously such a weird sort of one where they'll be playing all right, and then the flick of a switch to turn on and just play absolutely excellent for 15 minutes and score 2 or 3 goals. It's a very weird one, but I think it'll be very, very difficult for Dundee United to really keep up with them.
Paul's asked in the chat, was wondering what you guys think of Duke's comeback from an outsider's point of view. I think his performances in the last 2 games have gone some way to make things up with a lot of the Aberdeen fans. You kind of touched on this earlier on, Mikey. I mean, Duke has looked very, very impressive. Came off the bench against Hearts a couple of weeks ago and was lightning. He looks a lot better this season, and I think Aberdeen fans probably are starting to take to him again.
Yeah, I agree, and I think last season he looked very uninterested. And the main concern I had when the whole thing came out that he was getting put back into the team was that he's only going to try and play for a move in January. Now, I think that the main thing that's really changed my opinion on that was after the block against Celtic on the line, what it meant to him and what it meant to the team. I think that's where it kind of flipped for me and quite a lot of people that, oh wow, he is really trying to kind of repair some stuff, and instead of looking for a big move in January, which we never know, he might get a move in January, but instead of him just putting himself in the shop window, he really is doing something for the team and trying to repair that bond with the fans. And I think that the only thing he can really do is put in performances, and that'll fix it, because there's no amount he can say. Like, he can say sorry and whatever, but the main apology he can have is by playing well on the park and doing his job, and he's more than definitely doing that at the moment.
Yeah, Robbie, football fans are fickle, but it does just take one little thing to turn things. And Mikey's right. That block at Celtic Park last week, you can see they celebrated that like it was a goal. He has come back looking a lot better. Didn't get his move, but you know what? Maybe down tools a little bit, but he's come back and thought, right, I want to show what I can do. And he's proven his worth.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it seems like that block just completely flipped a switch. But, one thing I would love to have heard is, the chat that Phelan Duke had, because you maybe need to give some credit to Phelan. It's so easy for a new manager to come in and, a player isn't sold on what he's got to do. But it really seems like Duke and the rest of the team are completely sold on what Phelan wants to build at the club. So, Duke, he might have down-tooled a bit this season, but, I'm sure Phelan would have said to him, look, if you play well, you can get that move, you can go away and get that big move. So for the player, it's absolutely massive. And Duke, again, as you guys have already said, he looks so energetic, and the player you can get with Duke, he does have a lot of quality. So I'm sure he'll kick on this season, do really, really well.
Mike, it shows how well Aberdeen and United are both doing, because Paul says the match is completely sold out, both the home and away sections. For a 5:30 kickoff away at Aberdeen, that is very impressive. That's sold out.
Well, yeah, it's basically their sort of local rivalry that they've had for a while. It's not really local, but it's the Newfoundland Derby. It's a massive game for both sides, and I think that it's really testament to the way the teams are playing at the moment that they're attracting the fans in, because it's so easy when a team's not playing well for attendances to drop. I mean, just look at the Edinburgh Derby this weekend. The Hibs section isn't fully sold out, and I don't know if the Hearts section is. I believe it is, but I mean, it just shows that by good performances, you're bringing good numbers of supporters.
I mean, as well as Aberdeen are playing just now, Robbie, they will obviously be looking at Dundee United and thinking, well, they're sitting fourth for a reason. They've done very well so far this season. That win last week, but some of the games they played United, I think they've looked very impressive. Lucas Stevenson, the young laddie, I think I've been very impressed with him. They've looked very good.
Yeah, 100%. And I need to give a lot of credit to Jim Goodwin, because one thing that I always said about Goodwin, it was an experience to us. It looks like he's went away and developed a lot. He's not afraid to make a change. You need to look at the game against us. He takes off one of his players for Glenn Middleton on around about the 30th minute mark, because he knows as soon as he switches, the game's going to be different. I feel like Goodwin has grown a lot over the last couple of years since leaving us, and I think that's only going to work better for Dundee United because he knows how to get that team playing well. And you've got to say with Dundee United, Goodwin also doesn't overcomplicate things. He likes to play it very basic. He knows how to get the team playing, and he's not scared to drop players as well. I know he's taken off Van der Sande a couple of times when he's not been at the races. So if you're Goodwin, you've got to be loving it right now because he's not scared to make the changes, and it's working. Dundee United find themselves in the top 4 right now, which I get it's still very early on, but there's no reason why they can't still be battling up there come the end of the season if they keep playing the way they are.
Mikey, Jim Goodwin will always have on his CV, and it is harsh, but he will always have that spell at Aberdeen where they got hammered by Hearts, hammered by Hibs, beat by Darvel. He is a very good manager, though. Certain managers suit certain clubs. Aberdeen didn't quite work out, but at Dundee United, he just suits that club. And I think he's done a really good job so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think last season there was question marks over it because they should have won the league and they did. And it's not exactly like it was a massive achievement because, it was actually seen as a bit more of a negative that he didn't get the job done earlier. But I think the step he's taken up to the Premiership, he's been absolutely excellent. And it just shows with the way that the team's playing. I think it's just the sort of the similar thing with Aberdeen where they never give up. They fight right till the end, and that's why they scored 2 goals against Hibs. And I think that obviously the game against Hearts, and I think that they're a real banana skin for big teams, and the fact that they're sitting right up near the top is a massive one.
Someone I think does deserve a lot of credit, Robbie, as well, and I know there's been talk about a Scotland call-up, but I don't think it'll happen, is Ross Graham. Defensively, I think he's looked very good. Scored the goal at Tynecastle. I think he has been very impressive in that Heart United defence.
Yeah, 100%. Graham's been an absolute massive part in Dundee United's defence. I agree with you. I don't think a Scotland call-up will happen. But there's no doubt he's been quality. And, like Aberdeen, the whole Dundee United squad have a lot of togetherness. They all look like they want to play for the manager. And Jim Goodwin must be feeling such confidence right now because, again, you guys made the point it didn't work out at Aberdeen. I feel like if, you gave Goodwin a couple more seasons, I feel like that could have ended differently at Aberdeen. I just feel like he was far too inexperienced for the job, but he's landed himself at a perfect role here. And I think he'll keep building with this Dundee United squad. I think if you ask Goodwin, truthfully, I don't think he'd move like he did with the Aberdeen from us. It felt a bit rushed at the time. I don't think if an offer came up like that again, I don't think he'd take it straight away. I think he'd actually consider it. So for Goodwin and the players, they're building something really special there.
Yeah, Paul says in the chat, interesting to see the reception Jim Goodwin gets. This will be his first match back at Pittodrie since the infamous week in January 2023. Mikey, I hope he gets a decent reception. I'm not sure he will, if I'm going to be brutally honest.
No, but I don't think that was his fault. I think that the performances, obviously up until that point, it was all his fault. But I think especially those 3 games against obviously Darvel, Hearts and Hibs, I don't think that was on him. I think that was the players down in tools, and I think that was very obvious to see. And I felt really bad for him. Yes, he had to go at the time. Yes, it was completely unacceptable, and it's a huge stain on the club because I think I have family members who support Aberdeen, and they said that was the worst week in the club's history that they've ever seen. And it's one of those where, yes, the rest of the time wasn't good enough, but those sort of 3 games, I don't think that was his fault. I think the players were completely to blame for that. And unfortunately, when stuff like that happens, it all falls on the manager. So I don't think he will get a good reception, especially due to the fact that he went to Dundee United, one of Aberdeen's rivals, so quickly after he left. And yeah, I think he won't get a good reception, but I think it's quite unfair because I think he was thrown under the bus by his team on those 3 games.
Robbie, you'll have fond memories of Jim Goodwin at St Mirren.
Aye, let's just hope for this weekend Jim Goodwin has his most slip-resistant shoes on because if he falls again, he'll make an embarrassment of himself. But I have just seen Scotland women have just taken the lead.
Yeah, Paul's just mentioned that in the chat.
Yeah, it's a great ball in, a good finish as well. Good result for them. But Goodwin, I will always love Jim Goodwin, no matter what he does in his career now, because he was just a legend for us. A lot of fans, he still gets a lot of boos when he comes back to Paisley, but I think he is a good manager and he was an even better player, but he needs to make sure he doesn't slip again because that will be quite bad if he does.
Prediction for this one, Mikey?
Is it at Pittodrie? Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to go 3-1 Aberdeen.
Martha Thomas was a goal scorer for Scotland. Robbie, prediction?
Having just spoken about Aberdeen no slipping up yet, I'm going to go for a draw here, and I think it finishes 1 each.
I'm going to go 2-1 Aberdeen. I think they'll just sneak it. Let's go to the final two games tomorrow. Let's start at Dens Park. Dundee against St Johnstone. Dundee currently sitting 6th. St Johnstone sitting 9th. Dundee on the back of that 1-0 win against Motherwell last week. St Johnstone a very, very good win against Ross County. Simo Valakari at the moment, I don't think yet has got his permit yet. Hopefully that gets sorted out soon. How do you see this game going, Mikey?
I just think it's such a jumble in the Premiership at the moment, just with the table. I think that everyone seems to be a bit out of position compared to where they probably should be. So I think that it's a real opportunity for teams like St Johnstone, who were favourites to be in that bottom two, to even push themselves up into the top half, which I don't think anyone would have seen at this stage. Dundee, they've been on and off, but I think their performance last week was very good. And it'll be one of those where Dundee, it's another one of those rivalries. And I think it's going to be a very decent game. I think that St Johnstone will go into it trying to prove a point that they are good enough. And Dundee are going to try and take the sort of the bounce from that game against Motherwell, because it was a huge result for them, and it was the same with St Johnstone against a relegation rival in Ross County. So yeah, I think it'll be a very, very interesting game.
St Johnstone did put on their Twitter that Valakari will be in the dugout.
He will be.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I mean, just looking at that game, Robbie, I mean, Dundee have had a kind of inconsistent season so far. I know it was always going to be difficult when you lose a guy like Luke McKeown, who's been fantastic for them. But at home, it's a game that I think Dundee will be looking at thinking we can pick up 3 points here.
Yeah, I think Dundee have got to fancy themselves. Obviously, getting the win last week, it can build some confidence on them. But this will be a tough game. It'll be interesting to see how Valakari finds it out in the dugout. But I'm sure he's been training with the team and stuff. He will have implemented some of his ideas, and it clearly worked because they picked up a very good win last week. So I think both teams will be confident getting into this game. It's going to be a really interesting one to see how it finishes.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, Tony Dockett is a good manager. I think he's been very good for Dundee so far. Like I said, they've been a bit inconsistent this season. They do have a threat up front to Simon Murray, who can definitely cause St Johnstone problems. Dens Park is not an easy place to go. And I guess the St Johnstone side that have actually improved slightly. But like I say, I'd expect Dundee at Dens Park to be looking at this thinking, we can take 3 points out of this.
Yeah, I think that any time it's a home game for any side, it's more of an advantage than it is away from home, obviously. And I think that Dundee will try and play off that, because St Johnstone will be going into this thinking, hold on, we've been expected to go down. And I mean, even the game against Rangers, like, they did lose, but it wasn't a hammering. And things do seem to have kind of changed a little bit. The new manager bounce has kind of happened. And they'll be going into this with a bit of confidence. Dundee are going to have the home advantage, and I think they'll play off that. And I think Dundee will win, but I think it will be a very competitive game, and I think it'll be maybe a bit sort of scrappy at times, but I think in the end it will be a Dundee win. But I think that the home element does play a huge part, because I think if it was at McDermott, it'd be a very tough one to kind of call.
Robbie, I hope our St Johnstone friend Alistair is watching this. Now, I know that Ross County maybe weren't great last week, had a man sent off, but I was actually quite impressed with St Johnstone last week. I thought they played some decent stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure Alistair will be delighted with the start. Obviously Valakari not being in the dugout, it could have been much different, but he clearly has implemented his ideas. I love to try and get Alistair on the show and get a bit more of his thoughts on it, because it seems like a very interesting appointment. And for what I've heard so far with Valakari, it almost gives off a feeling vibe where he's very demanding and he knows what he wants for the team. And it's going to be interesting to see if we can take this team. I'm sure Alistair would agree it's not great at all. But it's a million miles off whatever St Johnstone fans would want. But it'll be interesting to see if he can make things happen with the team, because, as Alistair said in former shows, it is only a couple of players that are really crucial, and then you've got a team of very average players. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this game. But no doubt it'll be a struggle for St Johnstone.
Yeah, Mikey, I think Robbie talked about a couple of players that St Johnstone really rely on just now. There is no doubt that is Kim Pioka and Sidibe, who do look very impressive. They've both got pace. They're decent finishers as well. And last week they caused Ross County numerous problems.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it can become a very worrying time when you look at a squad and pick out 2 or 3 players that, yeah, they're Premiership level, but you look at the rest of the team. Would that look completely out of place in a Championship season? I don't think it would. So I think that's the main concern, because if they lose Kim Pioka or Sidibe in January, I think that they could have anyone as manager and they'll have a really tough time keeping them up. But I think the fact that they have got them really firing at the moment and have them playing well does give them a bit of an advantage when it comes to trying to sort of build that gap over teams like Hibs, who are really stumbling at the moment, Ross County. And I think it can only really be a positive. But as you say, if you look at the squad all round, it's very, very low in terms of overall quality, which is a huge worry for them, especially when, as I said, it gets to that sort of Christmas period when injuries are more common and you're playing 2 or 3 times a week. And yeah, you're really starting to feel that. And as soon as you lose maybe one of those 2 key players, then things can start going south very quickly.
Robbie, while one Hearts youngster, James Wilson, was scoring for Hearts last week, another one was also scoring for St Johnstone last week. Mackenzie Kirk managed to get his first goal for St Johnstone last week. I've said to Alistair before, I thought Mackenzie Kirk was a really good signing for St Johnstone. He's got pace, he's a natural finisher. He's got that first goal last week, and I honestly think he could have a really good future ahead of him.
Yeah, I think so. I think you've made it very clear how, good it can be, and I think he's shown that for St Johnstone. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and getting into next season as well. But he is on loan at St Johnstone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when he gets back into the team and see if he can build his way up there. But if you're St Johnstone, you rely on players like that. You can bring in the players and test them out and build them up. But it's, I don't want to say they almost seem like they're a feeder club to clubs, but that's almost the way it feels sometimes. Like, you can send a player there and you most certainly probably will get game time, but just how, average the squad is. So, it's good to see players like that scoring goals, and, it could have a really bright future ahead of him.
Mikey, I think for St Johnstone fans, it must be music to the ears to hear Valakari talking about wanting to play a more attractive style of football, given what they've had to put up with recently. But it's all very well saying that. You've got to then implement it. And I don't think, we've spoken about this before with Alistair, they don't really have the quality to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it'll be one of those where it's a process, but does he get the time to do that? Because as soon as you're committed to making huge changes, you are basically needing time. And unfortunately, that doesn't really get given now. So as much as, yes, it's obviously, if that was the formula to change, every club would be doing it. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. And I mean, there's one part of it having the time, there's another part bringing in the players to do that, because any players who are really equipped to be able to play that type of way, you can maybe snag 1 or 2 of them, but most of the players that you're looking at will not join. For example, like from what I've seen, Livingston last season, when they were in a situation when they were trying to stay up and they were trying to fight to keep the survival, there was a huge list of players they wanted, and I think they ended up getting to like their 9th or 10th option before they could get anyone. And it kind of can come in with St Johnstone as well, when yes, they're trying to play attractive football, but the players aren't able to really do that, and the players that are going to be maybe out of the budget or not able to sign. So it's very easy kind of talking a good game, but there's many sort of variables that go into that can kind of prevent you from being able to.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, sorry, it almost gives a feeling, I don't know if anybody plays Football Manager, but like you take over a Varanama national team right down in England, and you go 4-3-3, Tiki Taka, and then you end up getting sacked 4 months later. So if you're Valakari, you need to be careful with how you go about this, because it's all well and good saying you're going to play that type of football, but if, in this league, if you get opened up, a game can turn on you very, very quickly. So it'll be interesting to see how he implements this.
Yeah, I mean, I get it's a difficult one, Robbie, because I think start of the season, I think everybody pretty much had St Johnstone to go down. No, I'm still not sure that they won't go down, but I think Valakari does seem a decent appointment. But like I said, he doesn't really have the squad, and he doesn't have the squad depth. I mean, come January, it's difficult to bring players to St Johnstone. They'll never do what they've got, but I still have a feeling that they will still be down the bottom end of the table come the end of the season.
I think so, but the league is so hard to predict this year. Now, I had somebody ask me the other day, do you think Hibs will be in the bottom three? And I was sort of sitting there trying to answer, like, I honestly do not know. The league's so close this year that I feel like you can, no offence to Ross County, but I think you can almost guarantee they'll be bottom two come the end of the season, unfortunately for them. But you look at everybody else, maybe Barset Johnston as well, like, it really could go any way. So I probably would say they'll be bottom two, but I definitely don't think there'll be a drift at the bottom of the table. I think it'll be really, really close this year.
Okay, prediction for this one, Dundee, St Johnstone, Mikey?
I'll go 2-1 Dundee.
Robbie?
I'm going to go Valakari to get his first win in the dugout. I'm going to go 1-0 St Johnstone.
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go 1-0 Dundee. I think it'll be quite a scrappy game, but final game of the weekend on Saturday is Ross County against a rejuvenated Kilmarnock. Ross County currently sitting 10th. Kilmarnock have now managed to get themselves up to 7th. I mean, again, Ross County maybe not having the best of the season so far. Mikey against the Kilmarnock side who I knew it would happen eventually. They were going to start picking up results, and they have. That was a big, big win for Kilmarnock last week against Rangers, and it wasn't even a fluke. They thoroughly deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just look at the way that they played. They could have scored 2, maybe even more. One of them was obviously just offside, and they had a few really good opportunities within the game. And yeah, I mean, for Kelly, they were never going to stay bottom forever. Like, they were going to start picking up. And yeah, they obviously have the quality there to push up the league. The problem for me with Ross County is, apart from maybe 1 or 2 players, their squad looks very sort of low on quality. They've lost a couple of players to red cards as well now. So yeah, I think in all competitions they've played this season, I mean, they went out to Spartans in the League Cup, and yeah, there's been games where they've done well, and I mean, had they picked up the 2 extra points against Hearts when they were 1-0 up until the last minute, things look a little different. They're a couple of places higher, and maybe even visually it looks less sort of negative than it actually is for them. But I mean, yeah, there's no hiding the fact that they're not in a great spot at the moment, and I think that if they end up going on a bad run of form, like it continues, then Don Cowie will probably be under a bit of pressure, because staying in the league is so important for these sides. And even if a manager's kind of left with a very limited opportunity to stay up, if they're not doing that, then they'll get sacked anyway. And yeah, I'm not hugely confident for Ross County this season. I think between them and St Johnstone at the moment, they look considerably the worst side. I mean, obviously the 3-0 loss last week, but yeah, I just don't really see where their points come from, apart from maybe like a Hibs or a Dundee or something like that, like one of the sides that are maybe not as good away from home, or are sort of liable to slip up points. So it's a very difficult one for them.
Yeah, Robbie, I talk about quality with St Johnstone. It's the same with Ross County. You know, for the last couple of seasons, they've been in that playoff place. They managed to stay up with the skin of their teeth. For Ross County fans, it must be a case of, oh, here we go again. But it's just that lack of quality. I know they were down to 10 men last week against St Johnstone, but they looked really poor. There was just that lack of quality. I think Ronan Hale's a decent signing for them, but apart from that, they don't really have much else.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Ross County squad, it's not exactly full of quality. It almost feels like weekly we're saying, can Ronan Hale bag them a few goals to try and get a result in this game? It almost feels like it might be that way for the rest of the season. They'll all be relying on Ronan Hale to try and get the goals. Apart from him, there's not much quality anywhere else on the pitch. So I think Ross County, they'll probably be one of the bottom 2 this season. They put in a couple of decent performances, but they're not showing anything special. And as Mikey said, Don Cowie will come under pressure if he keeps losing games. It just happens. But I just wonder, could that team go down and get back up, because it does just lack quality. It feels like, as Mikey said earlier about St Johnstone, a very championship team. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if they end up getting them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big game tomorrow, Mikey. I know we'll get to Kilmarnock in a second, but it's a big game for Ross County tomorrow. They have to bounce back after last week. Obviously, with Hibs and Hearts play on Sunday, they know they can maybe pull away a little bit. So it's a big game for County tomorrow. They have to show some kind of reaction.
Yeah, and it's one of those where they're at home, they've got the backing behind them, and obviously Kelly are having to have a really, really big round trip. I mean, the travel does unfortunately come into it a bit with the players. I mean, they're coming from it's probably the furthest away day in Scotland from what I can think. And yeah, it's one of those where they gave Celtic a really good go at home. I think that kind of goes overlooked a little bit because they lost the game, but they were very close to winning that game, or at least getting something out of it. And yeah, it's one of those where Kelly are going to be probably the better side within the game. But if Ross County can get a goal on the break through, for example, Ronan Hale, then you never know what could happen. It's not exactly like they're playing a Celtic or a Rangers where it's impossible to win. It is a winnable game that they'll be looking at. But yeah, as you said, with Hibs and Hearts both playing on Sunday and teams around them kind of playing each other because it's so close in the league that one win can really elevate you up the table quite a bit. So the same with St Johnstone. If they go and win this, then the sort of crisis, as it were, is kind of gone, at least for a couple of weeks. And yeah, that's kind of the way that they should be looking at it, as an opportunity to try and push up the table a little bit.
Yeah, Rob, when we're looking at Kilmarnock, I always thought after they got knocked out of Europe, because European football is difficult playing Thursday, Sunday, that they would pick up, and they have now started to show what a Kilmarnock side is. They're difficult to beat, they're difficult to play against, they have a threat. You know, David Watts, we talk about all the time, he's such a good player. This is a game that Kilmarnock will be looking to try and build on last week's performance, because there's no point in beating Rangers than going to Ross County and not winning. They have to win that game tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, for the Rangers performance last week for Kilmarnock, it was so interesting to watch. You know, usually it's a Rangers or Celtic going there and going, you come and you come and break us down and we'll hit you when it hurts. But it almost felt like Kelly just said, come on then, try and break us down and we'll come at you. It was completely odd to see, but it worked. I don't think Rangers really showed much threat against Kelly, so it was a brilliant win for them, and they look so comfortable throughout the game. Of course, they need to build on that now. McInnes will know he needs the 3 points in this game to keep building, but there's no doubt that they can get them. And I think Kelly will build a bit of form now. Looking at the fixture list, they've got some winnable games after this game, so I think they will keep building. But it was a brilliant performance last week against Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, Mikey, the Scottish media are always very quick to jump on the bandwagon when manager gets sacked to say, right, Derek McInnes needs to be the new manager. They did it with Hearts, and I've seen and I've heard all week this week after Rangers got beat last week, surely it's time to get Derek McInnes in at Rangers. I don't think that would happen, though.
No, I think that for Rangers it's a much more complex issue because they'll be expecting a new foreign manager that's got all these accolades and is guaranteed to challenge for trophies. I mean, Derek McInnes is very good he kind of maximises the level around him because apart from last season when they really did overperform and get in fourth place, the Aberdeen teams under McInnes and the teams that he's had with Kelly have normally exceeded or have kind of reached the barrier of how good they can be. They've never really gone beyond that apart from last season. So I think for Rangers it'd be, as much as it's weird to say, because for example for a Hibs or like any team sort of below Hibs, it's a big appointment because it's a well-known Scottish name, it's stability. But I think Rangers are crying out for a risk that is going to bring them trophies. And yeah, I just don't think Derek McInnes is that kind of manager. But I think that he's a very steady set of hands, and I think if David Gray was to go, I'd very much want Derek McInnes in. But yeah, I see the point where it is like the whole idea of go for someone that's going to try and win you trophies rather than someone that's going to be sort of solid and kind of solidify you in second place this season.
Liverpool says, I'm going Ross Kent away next Wednesday as a Hibs fan. Oh, safe trip up there. It's not a nice trip to make, to be honest, on a weeknight.
Yeah, I've been up there before.
Yeah, it's not the nicest of trips. So, prediction for this game, Ross County against Kilmarnock. Start with you, Robbie.
I'm going to go 3-0 Kilmarnock.
Mikey?
I'll go with a 1-1 draw. I think that Ross County will be quite good in this game, and I think that Kelly will struggle a little bit.
I'm going to go 2-1 Kelly. I think Kelly will sneak this one. Paul says, I think Derek McInnes might be Scotland manager at some point in the future. I would not be surprised by that at all. We've got about 5 minutes to go, which is good because it gives me time to talk about the Scottish Championship. So the games tomorrow: Airdrie against Ayr United, Falkirk against Dunfermline, Hamilton against Morton, Livingston against Raith Rovers, and Queen's Park against Partick Thistle. At the moment, the top two are Falkirk on 23 points, Livingston on 19 points. But Livingston have got a game in hand. Let's talk firstly about Falkirk against Dunfermline, Mikey. Big game tomorrow. Falkirk have been excellent so far this season. Dunfermline currently sitting second bottom. They've not had a great start. I can't really see past Falkirk for this.
No, but I don't think it'll be a hammering, because usually when you get these kind of local rivalries or games that have a bit of animosity, you very rarely see a team get hammered in them. It's usually by a goal or two. So, yeah, I think it'll probably be 2-0 Falkirk.
Robert, it's a really decent fixture list again. I always talk about the fact the Championship, the best league in Scotland. You've got some really big games tomorrow. With that Falkirk-Dunfermline game, I mean, if Dunfermline could get something out of that, it'll be a massive confidence boost. But Falkirk just look so strong, especially at home.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that just shows how close the Championship is. You know, it's never a write-off that these teams can get results. I've not managed to watch too many teams. I've seen Hamilton and Morton a couple of times. But, you know, every team looks like they can compete against each other. So that's what I think makes it such a good league. But no, I think Falkirk will get the win here.
Let's talk about your second team, Mikey. Livingston at home to Raith Rovers. Again, Raith not having a particularly great season so far. They're sitting currently 8th on 8 points. Livingston has a very good start to the season so far. Right in behind Falkirk. As I say, game in hand. I'd imagine you'll be confident Livingston taking 3 points off Raith tomorrow.
I do think that they will. I think that from what I've seen from Livingston this season, they're very solid defensively. They kept, I think, 5 clean sheets out of 10 games, which is unbelievable. And yeah, I think they'll be in a very good position to win this one. I'm probably going to go 2-1 Livy with that one. I don't think Raith are at the top of their game by any means.
Did Livy not make a signing during the week as well?
Yeah, Danny Wilson. Yeah,
I think that's a good signing. Very experienced, very good defender. Again, you can tell Damon Martindale's bringing experience. They've got like Ryan McGowan in there. He's now signed Danny Wilson. He's signing very well for that Championship.
Well, actually, the whole thing with Danny Wilson was that I brought up earlier that Livy only managed to sign their sort of 9th and 10th options for last season, but Danny Wilson was one of them that they were trying to bring in last season, and they ended up going to Queen's Park instead. So to get him now is a very big move, and I think that'll really help them, because I mean they're already very good defensively, and adding him in is huge.
I mean, Mikey, obviously you've watched obviously Livingston more than us. For Martindale, I mean, how much this season? Because I've not got to see them yet. How much has the football changed on the pitch? Has it changed much since obviously the Premiership dropped?
Yeah, it's changed massively, and I'm not sure the fans are too happy with it, because it's very much trying to pass their way into the goal, which yes is on paper is good, but when it's taken 17 passes to take a shot when you could do it in, for example, 8 or 9, it's very frustrating. But yeah, I think it's been very interesting to watch at times, and for someone who I enjoy watching the games, but the results they don't matter too much to me. I just go for the kind of day out and the experience. I'm not too bothered by the result. It's good to kind of watch the more entertaining football.
I know it's still early in the season. There's a long way to go, Mike, and I know we touched on this last time you were on the show as well, but is it already looking quite bleak for Airdrie, sitting bottom of the league?
Yes, but at the same time, as you said, anyone can take points off of anyone. So it is very much, yes, they're in a bad position at the moment, but they can improve. The only issue is everyone's so close together, so it's more difficult to pick up points. There's no team that's a guaranteed 3 points every week.
Yeah, I mean, talking about guaranteed 3 points, Robbie, again, I'm looking at Airdrie against Ayr United. I know it's away from home for Ayr United, but again, they'll be very strong favourites to win that.
Yeah, I think so. And I know a guy that supports Airdrie, he just says it's not been the greatest season, but he says, there is a bit of quality there that they can go and get results. So it says when he watches them, he struggles to see, where it's badly going wrong. So I think it'll be a weird one, but I think you have got to fancy it to get the 3 points.
Just finally, Queen's Park against Partick Thistle tomorrow as well, Mikey. Queen's Park and Thistle having decent seasons so far. How would you see that one going?
Well, I've been kind of let down by Thistle. I thought they'd be the team that would kind of take the big step into the Premiership this season. It's been kind of brewing for a while now, but it's not looked anything like how they should. And Queen's Park have actually quite positively sort of they've been a very positive influence to the league this season. I think they're sitting fourth, and I've been very impressed with them. So it'll be a close game. It's a good Glasgow derby. So yeah, that's one that I'm looking out for. But I would probably just fancy Thistle based on the fact that I think they have the individual quality to beat them, regardless of kind of how well they've played over the course of the season so far.
Good stuff. So we are at the end of our show. It's been a very quick 2 hours, as always, very enjoyable. Thank you, as always, to Robbie and to Mikey for joining me. The guys are back on Sunday, looking back at the Edinburgh Derby. Hopefully it's 3 points for Hearts. We will soon find out. You weren't confident, mate. So yeah,
I'm not.
The boys are back on Sunday at 3 o'clock till 5, looking back at the games this weekend. Have a great weekend. Thank you, as always, for all your comments, folks. And we shall see you again on Sunday. See you later, guys.